Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. We do projects, training, consulting, all kinds of things. You can see our new website at customercentricity.com and the old site at DeltaCX.com. And welcome to a special Saturday broadcast just before the end of 2022. People have been asking for my Axure Advanced Skills courses to be put up on YouTube, and I had not done that yet. Just haven't had time. I was a little busy this year doing something called writing a book. So if you are not familiar with my new book, I hope you'll check it out. It's called Customers Know You Suck. So I hadn't gotten around to this, so I just figured, you know what? Let's just go for it. Let's just do a live stream where I'm going to teach you Axure repeaters. Now that means you are going to want to download a file. Let me put that up on the screen. If you are working along with me today, and whether you're watching this live or watching it later in the YouTube archive in the Axure playlist, please start with this file. It's going to make your life so much easier. I have built a lot of stuff into the file. You do not want to start with a blank file. So you are going to deltacx.link/repeaters, REPEATERS. That should give you a Google Drive link, and it should say, oh, we can't preview this. You will have to download it. Yes, download it. It's an Axure file. It's an RP file. It should open in Axure 10. If you have Axure 9, I got bad news for you. Today is Axure 10 day. Even if you want to run to the Axure website while I do a little bit more introduction and grab yourself a trial copy of Axure 10, do that now and maybe pause the video and start it again. We're going to be working in Axure 10 today. Axure changed repeaters, I wouldn't say drastically, but noticeably between Axure 9 and Axure 10. Some techniques are still the same, and there's a few things that are much easier in 10 that won't work in 9. You have to do the old way, the old grizzled way, the way that makes me have to print out a long pages and pages of notes to make sure I type the right thing and teach you the right way. So check in. Who's here? I see a few people are live, but it doesn't tell me who. So come on in and say hi. Make sure you've been downloading deltacx.link/repeaters. We're going to be working from that file. And I'm just going to give people a few minutes to set up while I give you a little bit more introduction on what is a repeater and why would you want to use one, which is always a good question. So don't skip this part. And also, we're going to be working together. So if possible, if you have two screens, set me up on one, set you up on another, or if you have a large screen, maybe you can split it, or worst case scenario, you're going back and forth between me and your screen. In that case, you probably want to pause the video to try some of the things I'm talking about. So a repeater is Axure's fancy way of saying we've got some data that we want to bring into Axure, and then we want to be able to realistically manipulate that data. So a repeater is really about the realistic manipulation of data. Now, the example we're going to use today is an e-commerce website, because many of us at some point or another work on a project selling something. Hi, Sarita. Good to see you. So basically, you could fake out an e-commerce website. You could say lorem ipsum and pretend there's products on the page and pretend when someone puts something in the cart, something's in the cart, lorem ipsum, who knows what. But in 2013, I had a project where the client is through an agency in San Francisco, and the client said, look, we have we sell these special cell phones, and you can only get these 3. And we want to make sure in usability testing, if someone clicks on one of these, that the real one goes into the shopping cart and the checkout accurately calculates their tax and all this stuff. That means a realistic prototype. That means you could try to do this in Figma, but it might be longer, harder, not quite the same, especially since, at least as of when I'm recording this, a faked out online checkout in something like Figma is probably not going to totally work since you can't type in a form field. So I learned repeaters, and I learned them from a video speaking German, and I don't speak German, but the guy was so good that I learned it in a language I don't speak. And so many years later, they've evolved a bit. So what's the realistic data set there? In an e-commerce example, as I'm going to show you, our example will be dresses. Hi, Manuel. So we're going to be showing an e-commerce page with dresses, but yours could be anything. Cell phones, records. Do people still make records? Yes, they do. So it could be any e-commerce of any type, but my hope is that once you learn the techniques, you can apply them in other ways. Another common use for repeaters is anything that's kind of a set of data. Very often you see people using Axure repeaters for data tables. You might have a table that says we have, first name, last name, email address, how long they've been a customer, bill. Maybe it's a table of billing stuff. I'm trying to turn off the heat and it's not working. Hold on. All right, that's better. And I don't know how you're all doing on a Saturday. I've been warming up by singing Fate of Man by Star One. Hi, Fasina. So if you would like a powerful song to drive you through the weekend, Fate of Man by Star One, written based on the movie The Terminator. Okay, so repeaters. Sometimes you can fake them out. It's faster. If you're doing a quick proof of concept, you might not need it. Sometimes they're great. I think on a previous show, I showed a repeater I did earlier this year where we were doing a job website. This was in my other job, and it was a job with a job website. And the idea there was that we were trying to let people pick from skills, and they could then add the skills. And I used the same techniques I'm going to show you today, where people were able to find the skills and add them. They became little chips. We're going to be talking about chips. And can you cover parsing variables in repeater data? Maybe. It depends what you mean by that. So again, we only have 3.5 hours together. In fact, I need to start my countdown timer to remind me to give you all a bathroom break at some point. So let me start that timer. Malika says, hey, I got my time wrong. Thanks for the Discord notice. Yeah, that comes from my bot. So thanks to the bot for reminding everybody today's show if you're in our Slack or Discord, which you can join for free, deltacx.com/link. So Mohit, that's a maybe. Let me know your questions and we'll see if we get to them. Again, please download the file from deltacx.link repeaters. Make sure you're working from my file today. Do not start from a blank file. So really, repeaters is anytime you want to realistically manipulate realistic data. Axure currently does not let you bring in a live stream of data or an API call. So you are bringing in data and then it's staying there and then you can realistically work with it and you'll see. Hi, Neelam. Thanks for coming to some of our recent shows so much. Thank you. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview on repeaters, but honestly, once we get into them and you're working with them, you'll get it. Another thing to remember is that this is one of my advanced classes. That means if you are new to Axure, I'm going to be using terms and techniques that you should have learned in my core skills courses. Now remember, over here on YouTube, I've got 13 hours of free lessons on Axure. That's my core skills class. It's what I think everybody needs to know to be able to do Axure at least a beginner or intermediate level. So note, I'm going to be talking about things and assuming you know what they are. I'm going to be talking about conditions. I'm going to be talking about dynamic panels. I do not have time to explain what is a condition, what is a dynamic panel. That's in the core skills courses. So I admit there's a little bit of a prerequisite here in that I assume you already have decent, basic, possibly intermediate Axure knowledge. This is not a lesson for super newbies. This is definitely a more advanced technique since it combines a lot of the techniques we learn in core skills. That's why those are core skills and this is more advanced. So here we go. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and let's see if I can get this right today. Here we go. Yeah, great. Okay, so this is my Axure screen. We've got the chat room, so if you have questions, put them in the chat room. I can see them, you can see them. Optional tip jar, which is totally optional, and for super thanks and the super chat and all that. And then my giant screen. So there you go. Now this should be the file that you have. Again, if you are looking at this and going, what is Debbie working on? How do I build that? You did not watch the first 8 minutes here. I am working from a pre-existing file that I will put it back on the screen. I'm going to come here and press the button for, there we go. deltacx.link/repeaters. That is the file you need to be working from. Do not work from a blank file. I've built a lot of stuff here for you so that we can hit the ground running. So make sure you have downloaded that file and that you're in Axure 10. Yes, this is vMix. I hope you're all enjoying it. Okay, so, all right. So what I'm going to first do is give you a tour of what I've built in the file already. Actually, let me keep that up on the screen for anybody joining late. So there we go. Okay, so here's what your file has. Your file has one page, 1001.repeater, and that's only because in my old advanced course it was chapter 10. So this was chapter 10, lesson 1. So here we have a single page, and it is a typical e-commerce browse or search results page. This was based on something I built while working at Macy's in 2016? 2017. This is an oldie, but it's still a good example. So let's look at what's pre-built here for you. So we have a left side column of typical filters for e-commerce. Now again, it doesn't matter where on your page these are. These could be a slide out, a drop down, something else. It's more important for you to learn the technique. It doesn't matter that they're a left column. Some are words. So these are just text, little text blocks. Some are checkboxes, price level 3 and price level 4. Obviously, when we did this at Macy's, we had a whole bunch of price levels, and I took them off for the simplicity of teaching Axure. That's why we have price level 3 and price level 4, because there was originally 1 and 2. We had lots of sizes over here, but for the simplicity of teaching, I'm just doing size 6. And we had lots of colors of dresses, but for the simplicity of teaching, we're dealing with black dresses and blue dresses. I have clear filters, which I didn't, which we sometimes added on at the end. So these are some of your common filters. Up in the top right, we have sort by price and sort by title. Now notice none of these things do anything yet. How do I know that? Because when I built this search thing earlier, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So let me erase that. You might not even have this search box in yours. I was messing with this morning, so yours might be like, wait, I don't have a search box. Don't worry, you'll add one in later. And again, it doesn't matter where you throw it. It's more important to learn the technique. But you'll see you have a lot of the same elements that I do. You have price and title. We'll be learning sorts later, as well as filters. You have a yellow box here with a lightning bolt on it. And if you're familiar with Axure, you know the lightning bolt means there's already some sort of interactivity on this. So notice there's no interactivity on the page other than this hidden thing, which we'll talk about later. It's our chips. So that means with almost no interactivity on the page, we're going to be building all of it today. You might not have the search box. I think I added that this morning, but that's really easy to do. I just typed the word search, and I went down here to my library and I dragged out a text field and I gave it a border color. So again, you can drag out a text field, you can give it border 1. Now you have a text box. Make sure you use text field and not just box, because box is just a shape and text field is an area where people can type, and we do want to be able to type into this later. What else do we see on here? We see 48 items in dresses, so we're going to learn later how to change that count as we filter stuff and we see the exact number of things that we have. We have a big blob of what should be searched or browsed items here, but you can see they're not quite showing the right information yet, so we're going to learn how to hook the repeater up to this. Manuel says, woohoo on the file, hugs, hugs. Yes, and then at the very bottom of the page, you see a fake website footer. And this is also going to come into play at the end of our lesson, because as we filter things, the page would hypothetically get shorter. There's fewer items on it. If we don't move up the footer, we're going to end up with a very long page with a footer way at the bottom. So again, for realism, we're going to learn how to shift that footer up so that it is always underneath these e-commerce results. Now, one thing we're probably not going to have time to cover today are some of the other features of repeaters. So note that there's more stuff that repeaters does that we're not even going to cover today, because even in 3.5 hours, we won't get to everything. So for example, one thing that repeaters does, we're going to do a little bit of today, is you can add to your repeater live while people use your prototype. So for example, if this were a data table, you could enter a new line of data. We are going to do a little bit of that, but not a lot of that. There's a couple of other things repeaters do that we're not going to do, and I don't know if we're going to get to the variables in repeaters as we've had the request. What was the other thing repeaters do that I might not cover today? I forgot, but I'll try to remember it later. But this again is a common example, and once you can get the feel for it, you will be cooking with gas. Now note that it takes me nearly 4 hours to teach repeaters to the level I'm satisfied with, even knowing it's not everything you could possibly do, and it really takes days of practice to feel better about it. So note that this file is ready for you to create your own practice. What can you do? Add more sizes. Put in size 8. What about another color? We have to see if we have dresses of another color in our little data set, the repeater itself. What about a different price range? What about 0 to 100? So you have opportunities here to do your own practice once you've learned these techniques. So let's also jump in and take a look at our repeater itself. Now the whole page is not the repeater, just the data set and how we see that data set is the repeater. Now to start a repeater from scratch, it's over here in your library. So notice I'm on the left side of my screen where the library pane is. And if you're in Axure 10, you'll see 2 repeaters. Axure 9, you'll see 1. Repeater table and repeater card. This is technically a table, but honestly, they're the same thing. Axure just made them look different, thinking it would be easier for you. They're the same. So you can just drag out a repeater table and start putting stuff in it. I've started the repeater for you. Let's take a look at it. I'm also going to switch in the top left here from page to outline. That way we can see everything I have on this page, and I'm only going to look at stuff with a name because I name my stuff, and that will help. Oh no, I'm getting slow mouse that I sometimes get when I'm sharing my screen in Axure. Okay, so let's talk about the repeater. Now you can see over here there is a repeater icon which looks like a little data table, and it says dresses repeater, which is what the name of this repeater is. But you can see it's inside of a dynamic panel. Note, your repeater does not need to be in a dynamic panel. This repeater is in a dynamic panel because we're going to do something with that later. I'll explain later what the purpose of that dynamic panel is. It's a little trick Axure taught me when I panicked in 2013 and needed to learn this fast. So we're going to use that trick later. But just know you don't have to put a repeater in a dynamic panel, but it's going to help us later with something sneaky we're trying to do. Who knows? They taught me that in 2013. Maybe we don't need it anymore. I don't know. I could try it without it, but I don't know. I'm a little old school here. So how do we get inside the dynamic panel to work on the repeater? So if I click on the dynamic panel, I'm now in it. I'm in the repeater state of the dynamic panel. I could do a view all to isolate it, and this would be our repeater. Notice that the repeater in Axure always has a green mask. Mask, not exactly the way you think of it in Photoshop. Axure calls it a mask. It's really just a transparent color overlay. So that's a clue to you that you're looking at a repeater because it is green. But if you're not sure, you can always click on it, and up here in the top right, it will say repeater interactions, and then you go, I'm on a repeater. It says repeater. There you go. Now I've named this dresses repeater, and that way we can make sure when we build stuff that we are using the right repeater. Now take a look at what's going on the bottom of my screen. Here's our data set. And I can resize this. Now, personally, I liked the way this looked in Axure 9 better than it looks. That didn't sound right. But anyway, looked better in Axure 9, still functional in Axure 10. And the idea is it's almost like a little Excel or Google spreadsheet where you just have data. And the data might be things that people see, like the name of the dress, the price of the dress, and it can be metadata that people don't see. So for example, the sizes, we're going to be able to sort and filter or technically just filter by those sizes, even though we're not showing people the size. But hypothetically, you could show people the size. We've got the colors of the dresses. We have star ratings. Now, we just made these numbers up when we made this for Macy's. These aren't the real prices. These aren't the real ratings. We made these up. I don't want anyone to get mad that these are low-rated things. We made these up. We just did 3, 4, and 5-star rated dresses. No reason to have 1 and 2 stars. And then we just made 2 types, daytime work and wedding guest. Why is that there? Because back on the page, remember we had those types where we could practice our filtering up here in the, let's see, get out of here. There we go. Looks like I got to go back to the full-size one. Oh, come on, Axure. There we go. So there we had guest of wedding, which we put in the data set as wedding guest, and where to work, which was, or work, whatever it was. So those are to practice those filters. There we go. Daytime work was for where to work, and wedding guest was for guest of wedding. So notice that our metadata doesn't have to say exactly what people see. It just has to be a good, consistent, clean set of data so that we can work with it confidently. Another thing to notice is that notice that my price doesn't have a $sign, and that's because I want to be able to sort it later on by price. I want to sort by lowest to highest, and I didn't want the $sign to mess with a sorting of numbers. Are you able to remove your delta? Oh yes, sorry about that. I kept that up to remind everybody to download the file. Hopefully everybody has done that. Thank you, Alexis. All right, so yes, thanks. Yeah, so now another question you might have is how you're going to get the pictures into a repeater. And these were the real pictures from the Macy's website. And all you have to do if you're creating a new row in your repeater is you're going to right click, or I think it's control click on Mac, and you're going to say import image. So remember, unlike the Adobe Suite, Axure is not linking to outside images. It is importing the images. That's why this file was probably pretty big when you downloaded it, because it says 48 items in dresses. There's actually 22 dresses, and so there's 22 big, nice quality pictures of dresses, which will make your file bigger and sometimes feel a little slower. So just a heads up on that. You can make Axure files a little bit faster with lower quality images, which we didn't do because we were trying to make it look good because it was Macy's. Up to you. So these are all imported images. The rest is stuff that you can either type in, or if you have it in something like Excel or Google Sheets, you can actually select your cells, copy, and come and paste it in here, which is neat. You can see you can also import a CSV. So again, Axure is assuming that you are working from a sample or realistic set of data that you want to bring in. Now, another thing that's going to be important is what we've named each of these columns. Make sure you've given your columns a really clear, obvious name, not column 1, column 2. So here, mine are really obvious. Screenshot, since we screenshot our images, that could be called image, doesn't matter. Something that makes sense to you. The ID, we were going to do something with the IDs and then we didn't. So that's metadata we're not even going to use. The name of the dress, so that could say title or name. The price of the dress, the sizes it comes in, which we decided to separate by spaces. The colors that the dress comes in, we pretended some of these come in multiple colors. The rating and the type. And if you want to add more rows or columns, you just use these pluses out here. See, there's a plus out here that will add a column, so you can have additional metadata or scene data. And then at the bottom here, there's another plus. We could add a new row and add to our data. You can also remove a row. We can right click on it and say, move it up, move it down, insert. So you can see if those of you used to dealing with little tables of data, there's a lot of common features here that you should be used to. So now the next question is, we've got this repeater, and I'm going to make it small again, or every time I click on my repeater, it's going to be this giant thing, which is why I miss the old way that Axure used to do this in Axure 9. Boo. So the one you might be saying, repeater, such a weird word. Why didn't they just call this data set? Because the idea is that you build a visual model for what each row of data looks like, and then Axure repeats that. So notice that we have 22 placeholders here because Axure knows we have 22 rows of data, and they're showing me the model that I started building for you. I started building you a big picture, a title, a price, star ratings. And I set that up for you, and let's take a look at how we now work with that model. Now, all you have to do is double click on the repeater, and you should get this isolated model. If you're not getting it, you can click on isolate up here in this green bar. But this is the model that Axure will repeat. And don't do what I'm doing. I'm just going to give you an example of how the model is repeated. Let's say I just grab a random icon here and I throw it over there. That's ridiculous. But watch what happens when I close this. It's on everything because I put it on the model, and the model is repeated for every row of data. So the reason why this gets a little funky for some people, and maybe the repeater's not right for you, is because every row of data needs to look the same in one way or another. There has to be some sort of standard, whether this is a more, what's the word I'm looking for, vertical table of data or more of a grid. So we are creating a standard and we're saying this is how it looks. Now close out of that for a moment. Just go back to the repeater. Make sure you're on it by, you should see repeater interactions. Click on it once and you will see some interesting things if you come here to the top right and you click style. There are ways to style your repeater. For example, how did I tell Axure that I want my grid of products to be 3 across? How did I tell Axure what spacing to put between the columns and between the rows? That's all here in the Style tab when you create a repeater. So notice down here I have a border, and that's set to 0. So there is no box around my repeater. Border is 0. Do I want padding on my repeater? Nope. In this case, I'm just going right to the edge of the repeater. I don't need padding. You might. Do you want the layout to be vertical or horizontal? So as Axure is feeding these rows of data into this model, should Axure be going vertically, which is something, something under it, something under it, or should it go horizontal? Something, something to the side of it, something to the side of it. In a grid like this, I like to go horizontal. We're going left to right. When do I use vertical? I do use vertical. If I'm using a repeater for like a long list of checkboxes or something like that, I'm probably going vertical. I have a column of checkboxes and then some space and another column of checkboxes because they're all in the repeater. But you can make checkboxes without a repeater. Now notice the row spacing and the column spacing. Try changing that just now yourself to see how that changes. If I change column spacing to 70, you'll see that my columns are now more spaced apart. I can change that back to 20. Row spacing, I have 70. You can see if I say 20, it's a little bit too tight. People are probably going to be confused about where does one row start or end. Could it be more? What about 100? Absolutely. This is up to you and your design styles or sensibilities. I'm just using 70 here and 20, totally up to you. Items per row, I've got 3, but again, what if it were 4? Okay, now I've got a 4th over there. What if it were 2? Okay, that's how my grid works. You tell Axure how you want it. And what does wrap mean? If we don't wrap, your entire repeater will just go left to right or top to bottom so it won't be a grid. And that's up to you. Again, totally up to you. You can try it without the wrapping, see what it does, and you can turn on the wrapping, see what it does. But it put 5 in a row and I want 3. Underneath that is, should it alternate the background color of the row? Great for data tables, not really great for e-commerce. So I'm not using that, but you can play with that too, where you can say, I want to alternate the background colors between rows, where there's going to be white and maybe a soft gray, or however your company does it, soft blue. And, pagination. That's not what I'm going to cover today. I'm not covering pagination. So if you're working on something that has a lot of items in the table, whether it's a data table or more of a grid, you might want to play with pagination, but I'm probably not going to get that today, considering we're a half hour in and I haven't built anything yet. So there. Okay, and if you have any questions as we go, definitely ask. I want to be interrupted if you're watching live. If you're not watching live, put them in the YouTube comments, and I will respond personally as soon as I can. Any questions in general, high level, about what a repeater is and why we might want it and how you create it from a little data table. And now we're going to go into the model and we're going to take a closer look at how to start feeding the stuff into the model. Anybody? Now notice the technique I'm about to use for feeding the data in is different in Axure 10 than it is in Axure 9. So hopefully you are all in Axure 10, where it is much easier. If anybody's in Axure 9, you have to build an interaction. But we're going to build an interaction for the stars, the star rating. We're going to do it old school, so you'll learn that technique as well. But for Axure 10, you get to do it a little bit faster and easier. So how can we tell Axure the picture goes in this picture placeholder? Now, this is just the image widget from over here in the library, because an image has to be in Axure's image widget. So that's Axure's image widget. It's a certain size. Now remember, because we're using a model where everything's going to be flowed into it, be careful of your ratio, your width and your height. If some of your stuff is wide and some of it is tall and some of it is square, this is going to get funky. You're going to want to standardize your pictures. If you have a square picture, go in and give it blank space on the top and bottom, so you're going to have to standardize your pictures so Axure doesn't stretch them, because they will be stretched. So how do I teach Axure that our screenshot column goes into this image, which by the way has this little, I named it image. Cool, check me out. All you have to do is click Connect Widget down here in the data table. I can say connect widget, and Axure says, cool, I'm looking at everything in your model. Where do you want this? And I can say, it goes on the image. Now my mouse is moving slowly because it does this sometimes, but there you go. We've connected this. How can you check? Everybody knows I like to inspire baby steps testing, which means don't build too much in Axure before you check your work. If we close this, your pictures should have flowed in. Now, we didn't flow anything else in yet, but your pictures should flow in. And in fact, with this data table open, we could actually connect the rest right from this view and watch Axure flow it in. If yours did not work, let me know and ask a question, but clicking Connect Widget in your repeater data should have flowed that in. Let's do the same thing with title, and let's get the title of the dress in the title. So I'm going to say Connect Widget. I'm going to come down to Title. I'm going to click it. Boom. Everything has flowed in. And we're going to do something similar but not the same with price. So price, I'm going to show you how to do it in the old school way, the Axure 9 way, because there's no $ here. Chances are you're going to want to show currency. $, euro, naira, whatever you pay in. So make sure that we do it the old school way. But for now, let's see, is there anything else we need here that we can do the faster way? Not really. The rest of them need a little bit more personal attention because we need to manipulate what Axure is doing. We can't just say, yeah, flow this in. So that means we're going to need to build some interactions. I'm also going to squish the data table down because it is just so big and I miss it. The old version of Axure used to put it in the right column, like over here. And that was great because you could get it out of the way. But now it's just so weird over here, and you can move it around and you can make it bigger, but I don't like it. All right, so we need to build a few interactions. One of them is going to dump the price into the price area. So now I know many of you see this big blue button that says new interaction, but if you've taken any of my core skills courses, you know I don't like to use that. I like to use the icon that's right above it, which it looks like something exploding out of a box. This is the larger Axure interaction editor. I'm a little old school. I like to have a larger space to think about my interactions and build them in this area rather than building them in the bacon strip that is the right side column. So what is our event? Remember, the event is the trigger that makes Axure perform an action. So what's going on here? Well, we want to say when the repeater loads, hey Axure, we need you to do some extra things for us. So that is going to be an item loaded. Now, what are we going to tell Axure? We're going to tell Axure to write the price in the price area. That means we need a set text. So set text, okay, now where? We've got so many things, but we want to make sure, now something else is title here. Don't get confused. There's something called title, which is the sort by title in the top right. And then if you scroll down to the bottom of the list, we have the oh, sorry, we're not dealing in title right now, in the price. The price that's inside of the repeater model. So be very careful when you're naming stuff and when you're selecting stuff that you pick the price that's inside the repeater. Do not pick the price that is up here. You'll notice when you mouse over it, Axure shows you a preview, and it's even drawing a box around it on my canvas. You can see we are not talking about price in the repeater. We're talking about the other one. You could also name these something different so that it's clearer to you. You could name one price sort and name the other one repeater price. So again, little naming always helps save your butt later. So we'll say price. What text do we want here? Okay, so we need to set the value. Now, we did a little bit of this in the core skills course. This is going to look more advanced to people newer with Axure, but we need to paste a few things together to tell Axure what this should be. So I'm going to click FX. If you missed that, I'm going to do it again. Next to the value, I'm going to click FX. I don't need the word price there. That's what's there now. I need a number. Where am I going to get the number? I need the number to come from the repeater data set. Whenever you need something that is dynamic, pulled from somewhere else, you are looking at insert variable. Maybe this is what Mohit was talking about. I don't know. But I'm going to go to insert variable, and I'm going to scroll past the global variables to repeater / data set. You should see that. This is an accordion, and these are expandable. So I'm going to open up repeater data set, and you should have a light bulb go off right now. You should be like, ah, yes, look at that. There's all of the columns in the repeater. Screenshot, ID, title, price. I have a way to grab this data if I need to. So we're going to say item price. Now, if we just did that, which is how you had to do it back in the Axure 9 days before you could do connect widget, sure, it will just dump the number in there, 239, 150. But we want a $sign in front of it, or maybe you want a euro sign or something else. So I'm just going to draw an American $sign right before it. Notice that the $sign has to be outside of the brackets. The brackets tell Axure, I've got something dynamic in here. I have a variable, I have a function, I have a math calculation. Do not put your $sign out inside the brackets because it is text. It goes outside the brackets. So this should be set text price to $, bracket, bracket, item dot price, bracket, bracket. So I'm going to pause for a moment and leave this on my screen and let everybody catch up. And then when we click OK, we should see the prices flow in. And if you have any questions as we go, let me know. We are going to go about another hour before we take a quick bathroom break, so I hope everybody's holding it together. Okay, so I'm going to say okay, and there we go. And you might say, well, how come it doesn't say $90.95? That's not what our data says. So if you want to mess with prices in here, you certainly can. You can come in here and say, this item isn't, let's see, where's the one we're looking at right now? Where's the $90 Calvin Klein dress? Of course, these were not 90 on the Macy's website. We made these numbers up. I could say this is $90.95 if I want. You know, you could do it that way. Warning. As we've talked about in the past, Axure is not great at non-American things. It is bad with euros. It is bad with commas where Americans put decimal points. Warning, warning, warning. So please keep writing to Axure support@axure.com, and tell them you want more international support, because I think they should have had that 7 years ago and they haven't done it yet. So notice right now, non-North American currency numbers are often a mess. But yours should now work. You should have your picture and your title and your price with some sort of price symbol. Now, next we need to do something about the star ratings. Now, this gets really interesting because we need Axure to think a little bit and be a thinking robot, because we might have a 3-star rating, we might have a 4-star rating, and we might have a 5-star rating. Now, again, you could have 1 and 2. I just didn't bother building them for the purposes of this, but you could practice with 1s and 2s if you want. Let's take a look at what we've got in our model. If I click on the stars, you'll see that this is a dynamic panel. How do I know? It's got a purple mask, a purple transparent overlay. And when I click on it, I get the dynamic panel icon, which are the little stacks. Up here in my outline, I see it's a dynamic panel with 3 states. I can mouse over those states to show you what they are. Now again, if you're going dynamic panel states, what's Debbie talking about? I'm going to say you didn't do chapter 12 of my core skills course back in the Axure playlist on YouTube. Please do. Today is going to be a little over your head, but please do that first. So 5 stars looks like that, 4 stars looks like this, and 3 stars looks like this. A dynamic panel is just a way to have different content in the same space, and you tell Axure which face to show to the world. So we've got 3 possibilities, 3 faces we could show to the world here for these stars, and we want Axure to be a thinking robot and show the one that matches the star rating. So for that, we're going to need to write some cases. And remember, cases often have conditions. So we're going to say, if the data in the repeater says 3 stars, set panel state, who remembers set panel state to 3 stars. If the data in the repeater set says 4 stars, set panel state to 4 stars. And the same for 5. So we'll have to write 3 cases to get this to work. You can always practice later by adding a 1-star state of the panel, give some of the dresses 1-star ratings, and practice writing the interaction for this. But we're going to practice together by writing the 3, 4, and 5. You know what I meant. All right, so I'm going to double click on item loaded so that I can get back into the interaction editor. I don't like to do this from the right side, bacon strip. So we're going to say enable cases. Now the first thing Axure is going to do is it's going to assume we want a case on set text. We don't. Remember, the cases and the conditions are the conditions are for if something, 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 then set this text. But we want Axure to always set the text no matter what. So, what do you do when you got to work with cases and conditions, but you always want something to happen no matter what? Let's walk through it together. I'm going to say enable cases, and I'm going to give this case a name. And I'm going to call it always do this. To remind myself that there shouldn't be any condition here. This is going to happen no matter what. I don't want this to happen only under certain conditions, but I do want the 3 stars to only happen under certain conditions. I only want to show the 3-star state of the panel if it's a 3-star dress. Once you're thinking, if it's 3-star, as soon as you hear yourself saying if, you need a condition. So we need to make sure we are handling our conditions. Now that we've turned on cases, we can tell Axure, when you are loading the item, I need a bunch of different things to happen. I need a bunch of unrelated things to happen. Add case. What can I name this case? If 3 stars. Now I need a condition because I just can't name the case if 3 stars and Axure knows what to do. We have to specifically teach Axure what to do. So I can say add condition. It's the if 3 stars condition. That's fine. New condition. Now Axure guesses. They're saying, do you want to know what the text on the search says? No, we don't want to know what the text on the search says, but we do want to know what the text in the repeater data set says. So we've got to say, we have to change this box. If text on widget search, no. If text in the repeater data set. So hold on, I've got to go. I can't, it's not on a widget. It's somewhere else. It's a text value. So we're asking Axure to check text. So you want to say text value here. It's not a variable. I don't think it would be a variable. No, it's not a variable. It's a repeater. And we go back to fx. And we go back to insert variable. And we go down, we can close the accordion for global variables. Okay, so which column of data are we dealing with? We are dealing with rating. That's all I have to do so far. I'm telling Axure where to look for the information. Hey Axure, I'll say okay. If the text value of item rating equals, not search, 3, then there's something I need you to do. So that's where the condition comes in. Let me know if you have any questions as I do this. I know it's complicated. This is an advanced class. In some cases, you are just going to be parroting what I do today until you can practice it more yourself and learn it a little better. For now, just work along with me, even though some things might be like, what? Why? So again, our condition is if the text of the item rating dynamically pulled from the repeater dataset is the number 3, but we didn't tell Axure what to do about that. What should Axure do? Axure should set the panel state of the star rating panel, which is our stars here, to 3 stars. And we don't need any animations. It doesn't matter. We're just setting up, we're still setting up the repeater. And now there's a mistake here. So I'm not going to say okay yet because there is a mistake and our baby step testing isn't going to work. While I take a drink, does anybody know what the mistake here is? Now, this would require you to be more intermediate or advanced in Axure, so I don't expect anybody to know this. It's a tricky question, but who can tell me what's wrong and why this isn't going to work? I don't want to kill too much time. We'll see if anybody ends up knowing. But let's remember that when you have multiple cases in Axure, Axure by default assumes, hey, you must want me to run this case or this case. So either I'm going to set the price to the price, or I'm going to set your star rating panel to 3 stars. And you're thinking, oh, no, 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 no. I actually kind of need you to do both. And what happens is if one of these says if and the other says else, Axure is saying, I'm going to do this. And if I can't do that, or else I'm going to do this. You'll end up finding that your prices get set and your stars don't get set because Axure thinks it only has to do one of these two things. Again, that is a more advanced level of knowledge of Axure and some of its intricacies. So the way that we fix that is we context menu click, which is a right click for me. I'm on Windows. We context menu click on the second case. We don't want it to say else because it's not do this or else do this. It's if. Now, every time Axure sees an if in front of a case, it will try to do that, whether or not it successfully did stuff listed before it. So remember, if you want Axure to do one thing or another thing, if or else works fine. Once you've got, ooh, do this and do this and do this and do this, you probably need to toggle your if and else. It's a very common mistake, especially a mistake for newer people who are like, I built a bunch of things and Axure's only doing the first one. Toggle your if and else. So is everybody caught up? Does everybody need more time? All we have right now is setting the item price and the second case for the item rating for the 3 stars, which we're just going to baby step test. How's everybody doing? I'm just waiting for comments in case there are comments, but I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to do a little baby step test before we do 4 stars and 5 stars. And I should be able to start scrolling down, and anything that was a 3-star dress should get 3 stars. Everything else is going to look like 5 because we didn't teach Axure when to give something 4 and when to give something 5. So it's just giving things 5. But notice some of the dresses are now 3 stars. If you're Ralph Lauren long sleeve and your bar 3 chiffon is not showing 3 stars, yours isn't working. So this is a great time to baby step test this. If yours isn't working, take a look over here at my interactions and see what we've done differently, or ask me a question. Chances are you need to toggle your if and else if, which again I do from the right click context menu, and I come down to toggle if or else if. Again, that is a little known Axure ability and a place where people often get stuck when they're building more complex stuff. So if there's anybody who's working along with me who is having trouble, Malika says A-OK, so very good. If anybody's having problems, let me know. But now we're going to do the 4 stars and the 5 stars. So I'm going to double click item loaded, and we've got a couple of options here. We could do a copy paste and see if we could speed up our work a little bit, or we can write another one by hand. So what I'll do is I'll write 4 stars by hand and I'll copy paste for 5 so you can see both techniques. So in order to do the next case, I need to go back up here next to item loaded and say add case. And again, we learned in the core skills class that every time you have a kind of a set of things you need Axure to do that's separate from other sets of things, you need a case. So what will this case be called? If 4 stars. Okay, now I need, notice Axure says if, yes, I need a condition here. Oh, it's asking me if I want to switch between if or else if. That's new. Okay, so that's doing our toggle for us. That's cool. Change yours to if. We definitely need the if, but we haven't even built the condition. Where is its freaking button that says add condition? That's gone. So I'm going to double click this and hope that I get 2 conditions. Yeah. Oh, Axure, that's inconsistent. I don't like it. Text value, function. Scroll down to item rating again. So same as last time. if the item rating says a certain number, do this thing. So we're starting out the same, but this time we want Axure to check if the item rating says, not the word search, the number 4. And of course, down here in the summary, Axure gives you a little bit of a more human look at what you've written. If the item rating, which is the dynamic data from our repeater, equals 4. So that is our condition. Axure will only take the action that we teach it if this condition is true. If the number is not 4, it's not going to do this. That's what conditional logic is all about. It's just like if you've ever created a survey with survey logic. If the logic is true and it happens, then the survey does the thing. If the logic isn't true, doesn't happen, doesn't pass, the survey doesn't do the thing. But we've only taught Axure the logic. We have if the item rating equals 4, some people forget and they stop here and they go, why didn't it do anything? You didn't tell Axure what to do. You need the action. So we're going back to set panel state for the star rating panel, and we're going to tell it now to change the state to 4 stars. If you're feeling confident, you can jump ahead and try the 5 stars, but I'm just going to say okay, and I'm going to do a little baby step testing. Okay, this Rachel Roy, if that's how you say that, now has 4 stars. So I can see some of my addresses have 3, some of them have 4. Now, since 5 is the default, you could probably leave this and it would work well enough, but just for practice, we're going to deliberately tell Axure if the rating is 5, show 5 stars, just for practice, so you can see it's working without that from process of elimination. If it's not 3 and it's not 4, it must be 5. But again, we'll go back into the case editor and we will do that. LinkedIn user, yes, gotta remember if then. Yes, these are conditions. If the data says 4, do this thing. So lots of that in Axure. Now, just for practice, let's try the copy paste method. I can go to 4 stars. I can context menu click, or you can do Control C or Command C, whatever it is on your computer. I can say copy and I can say paste. But I get the identical thing. Axure's not a mind reader. Now I have to fix it. So I'm going to double click it so that I can fix my condition and the condition's name. If 3 stars and if the value equals 3. So notice if you start getting comfortable with copy paste, you can speed up your work a little bit, but you have to remember to come in and fix it. So we fixed the name of the case, which is if 3 stars, and we fixed the text value. Now we're looking for 3 stars in the repeater data. But we also have to fix the action. Notice our action says if the item rating, oh sorry, we don't want 3, this was 5. I know someone will correct me in about 40 seconds. Okay, these were for 5 stars. Oops, and I should change the name of my condition too. Good morning, everybody. Okay, if 5 stars, then the rating is 5. Now I've got to come down here and fix the action. Hey, Axure, don't set the panel to the, thank you, Alexis. Alexis caught it, yes. Sorry, there's like a 30 or 40 second delay, so I'm not ignoring y'all, there's just a delay. So change this to 5 stars. Now remember, because Axure has these interactions organized like this, you can eyeball this and hopefully find some of your own mistakes, as Alexis and I just did. So you can look at this and go, okay, if 3 stars, item rating is 3, set the panel to 3 stars. If item rating is 4, set the rating to 4 stars. So sometimes I will just say this stuff out loud at my desk and make sure that I think I've done the right thing. Now I can say, okay. Now is a fantastic time to hit save. Control S, save. I save constantly in Axure. So save your file. We've got the star ratings. There's one more thing that we need to fix here before we start building some stuff, and that is, oops, some of these titles are a little long. What are we going to do about that? Now, when I built this in 2017-ish, or was it 2016? I don't even remember now. What I did was I told Axure, if it looks like a title is long, just shift the price and the stars down a little bit. Now, in this case, I only need to tell it to move the price down a little bit. Oh, Deb, what did you set up for us that you only have to move the price and not the stars? Let's take a look. Let's go into the repeater model. Oop, where'd you go, Axure? Repeater model. Here you go. Notice price has a little lightning bolt on it. That tells us there's an interaction on here. What is that interaction? Now again, we learned this in core skills. If you didn't do core skills, you missed this, but take a look. This says, hey Axure, if price moves, move the stars with this. So basically, it's almost like a lock function with respect to moving. It will tie these two things together. If price were to move up or left or right or down, the stars will move with it. And that way I don't have to worry that every time I want to move the price, I have to tell it to also move the stars. It just takes a little bit of brain energy off of me, which is always nice, but it's optional. You could certainly manually tell Axure, move the price and move the stars. I'm just reminding everybody of some of the cool features of Axure that you could say, yeah, just move the price, but then somewhere else have the domino fall and say, hey, if price moves, move the star rating panel with us. So again, what does that look like in the case editor? The action is move, and the target of what's moving is the star rating panel. And how does it move? It moves with this. What's this? This is whatever we've clicked on that we're working on right now. This is the price. So there you go. All right, so how are we going to tell Axure? Oh, and by the way, if this thing is too long, there's something I need you to do. Now, real quickly, I want to count how many letters are in here. Maybe we could do this by how many letters are in something. Let's see, 6, 7, 5 is 12, 13, 13 and 6 is 19, 19, sleeveless is how many letters? 10, 29, 30, sequined is how many letters? Looks like 8, 38, 39, 43, 43 and 6 is 50, 51, 54. Okay, so how many letters does it take to end up on the third row? Probably 40-ish. But again, this is not a fixed width font. It could end up a little bit funky, so we'll just have to play with it a little bit, but we'll give it a try. Now, this is also going to be in the item loaded, because we're saying, hey Axure, when you are putting the data in the repeater and fitting everything nicely into the model, there's something I need you to do. So it goes here in our item loaded, which means I'm going to build another case. And I'm going to say if long title, and I'm going to make it an if because I want it to run whether or not Axure did the other stuff. I want Axure to try to do this. Now the action is simple, the condition is a little bit complex. Let's start with our action. Our action was move. Move stuff down, move it out of the way. Move. What am I moving? I'm moving the price. Which price? The price in the repeater. So make sure you're looking at dresses repeater price. You don't want anything else on the page that's called price. So we want the price. How do we want to move it? We want to move it Y coordinates, let's say 35 pixels, and see how that looks. 35 Y, and I'm using move by. In core skills, we talked about move by and move to. This is going to be move by. I don't need an animation. People don't need to watch it sliding. But this will be 35 pixels. Positive numbers are down, despite how we learned graphing in school. Positive numbers are down because the top of our page is 0, so it's all positive numbers down in Axure. So, but now we need the condition. You didn't tell Axure when to do this, so we need to double click, go into our condition, and build our condition. Let's say, hey Axure, if the title is more than, I don't know, let's try 40 characters and see if it works. That means length of widget. Now we talked about length in core skills. Length is not a pixel measurement. Length is Axure speak and probably coding speak for the number of characters in something. So my name Debbie is 6 letters long. The length of Debbie is 6. It's not a measurement of pixels. So the length of the widget value, what widget? It would be the title that's inside the repeater. So scroll down way to the bottom and get the title that's inside the repeater. If the length of the widget value is greater than or equals, don't do equals. The mistake here is equals. If you do equals and then we put 40 in there, it'll only work when it's 40, not 41, not 42, not 50. It'll only be 40. So greater than or equal to 40. Now, why didn't I write this first? Because we need the first thing to happen. This is where order matters. If you didn't feed the title into the title widget first, Axure's just going to think it's the word title. It's 5 letters. You want to make sure these things happened in order. Let's see if I got this right, because I used to build this a different way. Let's see if this works. Yes and no. It looks like we moved a bunch of things down that didn't really need it. So notice this one got moved down, but it's only 2 lines. There isn't a great way to say in Axure, is this 2 lines long? Now I could use height. I could say if the height of this is more than a certain number of pixels, but we're just playing with different ideas to try to learn different things that Axure can do. So let's try something different. Let's see if it's greater than or equals 45. Nope, this one is still 2 lines long, but giving us a wrap. So again, this is something that we can play with. We could use length based on the number of letters. We could use height based on the widget height. We could play with different things here. 50 is almost working. Maybe we need something a little bit more. 52. Again, don't go too wild over this. Just know that you can control this if you want. It looks like this is mostly working except for this bar 3 one. Let me take a look at bar 3 for a moment. Is there extra spaces in there that I don't see? No, there aren't extra spaces in there. Yeah, so that's just something that you can mess with. And again, you could also do height. What would height look like? Well, the height here, we can see up at the top is 24. Chances are when it's 2 lines long, it's 48. And when it's 3 lines long, it's, I guess, 72. How's my math today? You could say if the height is greater than 50, move this thing. So you could play with different ways of telling Axure to do this. I've done number of characters, but that's probably going to be a little inconsistent because of the nature of a font that doesn't have a fixed width. So again, I can try a little bit more and see if I can make it so that, here we go, that one moved up. 54 seems to work, yes? Yeah, because we have this one on 3 lines. So notice that price moved down. We have this one on 3 lines. That one moved down. But again, if you changed your font size, all of a sudden they won't be on 3 lines. So you just have to watch this very carefully. And you might need to change it later. I'm going to press save. Save, save, save. Save religiously. Any questions so far? Because now we've set up our repeater. Now our repeater looks great. And in fact, if you want to press that preview button and take a look at it in your browser, which I can also do, I've got it set up in my browser. This is where we started. Now if I press refresh, this is what we have. And you can see you have something that looks like a normal e-commerce web page. Now, of course, it doesn't say add to cart and it doesn't have other features, but just for what we're going to be learning today, this is a success. It is working. Now, you might also notice that your page is left justified. Remember, we learned that in core skills. If you do not want your page to be left justified, click in some white space on your page to get to the page level. So make sure it says page over here. Then go to style and then for page align, click center. That's all you have to do. So click on the white space until you see page, go to style, do center, and excuse me, now you'll have a centered page rather than a left aligned page. Excuse me. Oh, okay. If there's any questions up to this point, let me know, because now we're going to start writing some of those filters so that we can do realistic filtering on Axure. So yeah, let's take a look. Okay, let's start with an easy one, which I think will be the size. Now, I've already built in some styling for you. And again, the styling was taught in core skills, like chapter 3 or something of core skills. If you do not understand selected styles and selected on and selected true and selected false, I'm going to be talking a little over your head here, but those are from the core skills course. So now you're just going to have to run with it and do what I do and do what I say, even if you don't fully understand it, and circle back later and watch interactions styles lesson from core skills. Okay, so let's come over to our size. It's a box. And when people click on the box, we assume they're selecting it. And if people click on the box again, we're assumed they are unselecting it. That means we're going to need 2 interactions. One is for clicking on it, and one is when, well, they're all clicking on it. One is for the intention of selecting it, and one is clicking on it with the intention of unselecting it. So we're going to do both of these for practice. Let's click on your size 6 box. Let's go up to our interactions. Now the event is click. We want this to happen if people click on this. So we pick the first one, click or tap, of course tap for mobile. And now we need an action. There's actually 2 actions here. One is to set selected. That's going to help this look selected. That's for our visual styling. So is that optional? Maybe. It wouldn't look realistic without that visual appearance of looking selected. So I'm going to say set selected, and I'm going to pick the first one, which is this, because we're clicking on this and we want this to look selected. So set selected this to true. That means when people click this box, it's going to have the selected look that I've pre-built for you. I pre-built that because we learned it in core skills, and there's no reason for you to spend time working on it today. But for those of you who are familiar with it, it is the selected style over here. Now that will just make it look lit up, but it won't put a filter on our repeater. We need to put a filter on our repeater. So in actions, scroll down to repeater actions. These are all the things that you can do with a repeater when you need Axure to take action. I want to add a filter. Well, first Axure says, which repeater are we filtering? We are filtering the dresses. We'll talk about chips later. And okay, Axure says, how am I filtering this? So we start with which column should Axure look for the data it's going to filter. We are looking for the size. We only want size 6. Now remember, my original data set had a size and then a space and then another size and then another space. If you leave it as equals, it will only look for something that has the number 6 and no other sizes. We don't want that. We want contains. Axure 9 and earlier did not do this. It was much more complicated to write this out. Axure 10 is much easier for repeaters by far. Now I don't need the text on a particular widget. I could do it. I could do text on widget this, not search. Don't I have a this? I don't have a this. How do I not have a this? Oh, because it's over here. No. Okay, that's no fun. Okay, so I could do that. Otherwise, I can just say text value. I'm looking for the number 6. Now, you might be looking for 6M. Maybe you have a size 6M. Maybe you have a size 6L. So put in whatever data you want Axure to filter for. Everything in this file says 6M, but I don't have any 6Ls or 6S's or 6 squared or whatever. But the problem is if you only look for 6, you could get stuff like 16. So you want to be very careful about how you do that. You might have to mess with your metadata a little bit to get Axure to be very specific with it. You might end up wanting to use letters for your sizes because it's just going to look for everything with the number 6 in it. And again, the problem is you could get dresses that are size 16 because there is a 6 in it. So this is just a reminder that you might have to mess with your own metadata and clean up your own metadata to make Axure do what you want. But just to learn this technique more quickly today, we're just going to tell Axure, give us everything with a number 6 in it, even if that ends up a little bit flawed. So now, do we want to remove other filters? I'm going to say no, because we are going to make our filters cumulative. We are going to say size 6 and black and $100 to $250, and we want those filters to be added onto each other, additive, and increasingly filter things less and less. So you want to uncheck this. Now Axure says, okay, then how do you want me to deal with multiple filters? Do you want me to treat them as an or these filters? Do you want me to treat it as an and? It's got to match this filter and all the others? Do you want me to try to be smart? Now, this is new in Axure 10, so you have to read this for a moment and try to make sense of it. So let's go through this in slow motion. Match Any says it can match this filter or any other filter. So maybe it's size 6 or maybe it's $100. Now notice those wouldn't be additive filters. And a Match Any, let's say we put 2 filters on. We do size 6 and we do the $100 one. That would give us all the dresses that are size 6 or $100. That means we'll get some dresses outside of our price range and outside of our desired size because this was an or. The Match All seems a little closer, right? It says it's got to be both of them. It's got to be size 6 and it's got to be $100 to $250 price. That you think that's what you want, and it might be, but let's take a look at Smart. Can match any filter on the same column, but must match all filters across different columns. This solved an old problem that we had with Axure when we built this many years ago. So it's nice to see they finally fixed a problem I was having in 2016-17. And that was, what if you want an inexpensive dress in size 6, so that's a match all, but you don't mind if it's black or it's blue. You're willing to take an or there. That was a problem in the old Axure. You had to write a very complicated manual custom thing to get it to do that. But now we can say Smart Filter, which means across different filters, it treats it as and. This size and, this size and this price. But across the same data, like color, it's going to treat it as an or, black or blue. I would say Smart. That way people can say, oh, you know, sometimes I wear a 6 and sometimes I wear an 8. I'd like to see dresses in both sizes. There's your or. So we want Smart here. Okay, let's baby step test it. We can't do that in Axure. We saw the repeater come to life in Axure, but now I'm pressing save. I'm going back to my preview and I'm going to press refresh. Now at first it's going to look the same. We didn't do anything here that we can see, but when we come over to 6M, you see it's got a little hover state that I included, the mouse over interaction style. Click the 6. Okay, so now it's got a thick line around it. That's the ugly style that I made to show that this was selected. But you'll notice, even though the number up here didn't change, which we'll teach Axure late in the lesson how to change that number, if you scroll down, you'll notice not all of the dresses are here. And in fact, we can tell because there's a big empty space on the bottom of the page where some dresses used to be. You should have that big empty space. You should have had something happen there where the filter was created. So let me know if you didn't have that happen. Now you can uncheck this and nothing will happen. We didn't teach Axure what to do if people click this again to unselect. Anybody having a problem getting that filter to work? Let me know now. Don't act cool and proud. You should have seen some of those dresses go away once we said size 6. Okay. I'm going to assume that worked enough for people, or you're going to try it later when you can pause the video and check it out. But again, just to see how I built that, remember this was set selected to true, which makes it turn on the visually selected style, which was that box around it, and apply the filter. Now, there's technically a third thing that should happen here. Who's familiar with chips in e-commerce? Even if you are not familiar with chips in e-commerce, you've lived through them even if you didn't know what they were called. Have you ever noticed that when you are filtering something on a website, could be e-commerce, could be a data set, as you create filters, a little blobby thing comes up, usually with like an X on the end to remove that filter. And it's an extra thing that pops up telling you, hey, you added this filtery thing. That's usually called a chip. We're going to add those here too. And it's going to be a very advanced technique, in my opinion, so it might feel confusing. You might be following along with me and you're like, I don't know why I'm doing this. But remember, for now, parrot me, and eventually with enough practice, it will click. I find that it takes most people about a week of repeater practice for the things you parroted without understanding why to click, and you go, oh, now I get why I did that. I see how that works. So, time for us to reveal this yellow box. The yellow box is just a hidden thing, so we can unhide it. All you have to do is right click or context menu click on it and say, set visible. So first, let's make sure everybody did a set visible there. So you'll see label and you'll see an X. But if we save that and we refresh, we'll notice it's not there. Is something wrong? Not really. Let's talk about what this is, why it has a lightning bolt. If you click on it once, whoa, it's a repeater. Again, the green mask was a little bit of a giveaway, but this is our new friend, the chips repeater. Every time we create a filter, we're going to have a chip show up for that repeater. That way people will see the filters they've created and they can remove them from the chip or by unchecking or whatever they've selected on the side. So that's also really complicated and why you need the repeater, because once you have 3 filters up there, what if someone removes the middle filter? It's got to work realistically. That's where you kind of need the repeater. It'd be really hard to fake that out. So let's take a look at what's going on in this repeater. It's called the chips repeater. It has one column. That column is called ID. Let's double click into it and take a look at our model. I'm just going to zoom way in on this thing so you can get a clear look. I made it blue. Yours might be gray. I was playing earlier and I made mine blue. Yours might still be gray, but basically it is a shape. And again, you can change your shape. It can be a rectangle. It can have rounded corners. Doesn't matter. This is about the technique. It's got an X for closing it. It's got text. So notice this is called filter name on chip text. And there you go. So we're going to practice building the chips to work. Now, first of all, notice that our ID is not connected. You should know what to do here. We need to connect whatever is going to be on this chip to its data column in the repeater. Connect widget, filter name on chip text. Now, there's no rows here. This is an empty repeater. We are going to be dynamically adding data to this repeater as people use the prototype. Yes, next level scary stuff. But this is the type of thing you might do, for example, if you're doing add to cart. You could say, oh, wait, my shopping cart is a repeater, and now I can take data from my first repeater and put it in the shopping cart repeater so that it looks like they really added that item and it's not just lorem ipsum going into the cart. Aha! Now we're going to come back to the chip later to do some more with it. Yeah, Malika says mind blown. Right. So there's definitely some other uses for this, but for now, know that let's just make this chip work, and then we'll worry about some of the more advanced things you can do with the chip, which we will do. So let's go back to a full zoom here. Control-0, I always forget that. Okay, so how do we get this chip to appear when we click 6 medium to make a 6 medium filter? Well, let's click on 6 medium. Let's go back to our interactions and let's add another action so that we can say to Axure, when people click on that, we need you to make it look selected, we need you to add a filter, and we need you to show a chip. Let's do it. Okay, so I just double-clicked on that to open up the interaction editor. Used to be called the case editor. You might hear me say that. That's old. And now I need to add another action that I want Axure to take when this happens. It is add rows. So remember, add rows adds a row of data to the repeater. I have the chips repeater set up where it's just going to go horizontally across the screen. So every time you add another chip, it will show up next to the first chip. So we can say add rows. Now slow down, not to the dresses repeater. We're not adding a dress, we're adding a chip. So add to the chips repeater. And Axure says, okay, but how do you want me to do this? We have to click add rows to teach Axure how we want this to happen. Add rows. Axure says, okay, look, you've only got one column in this repeater. It's the ID column. What do you want me to write there? Now we've got a couple of options. We can try to use the function thing and be slippery and dynamic. We'll practice that later. But for now, let's just do a manual version of this so that we can just practice manually. Hey, I want this to say 6M. You could just type right in there. I want to add one row and it says 6M. Because I know that's what I wanted to say. I don't have to use any fancy variables or functions or text on widget. This should just say 6M. Okay. So Axure says, cool, I'm going to add one row to the chips repeater. If you need to change that or fix that, just click add row again and deal with that as you need to. But that's what I want to happen. Let's say okay, and let's baby step test it and see if that's working. 6M, check it out. Now again, we haven't built anything that removes the filter or removes the chip or unselects anything. We haven't built any of that. We haven't. We'll do that next. But did everybody get that working? Did anybody have the chips repeater not show up? Typically the mistakes here are, because you're working from my file, is you forgot to unhide it. It's still a yellow box. You forgot to set it to visible. It's still hidden. That is a common newbie mistake. Another common mistake is people pick the dresses repeater instead of the chips repeater, and they accidentally add something to the bottom of the dresses rather than to the chips. So take a look at some of these things for your own mistakes. But if anybody working along with me live has made a mistake or it's not working, tell me now. Because again, this is a complex thing and it just gets more complex. But if you follow what I'm doing, even if you don't totally understand why, it should work. Okay. So let's go and take a look at what happens if people, let's start with clicking not on the chip, but let's say they click on size 6 again to unselect it. Now we've got to undo 3 things. We have to say, okay, if someone clicks on this to unselect it, we need to set selected to false to make it have the visual style of not selected. We need to remove the filter, and we need to remove the row from the chips. All right, how are we going to do that? Because it's on the same click. Now, the newbie mistake here is somebody just starts going, oh, I know what to do. Set selected false. No, this is the wrong thing to do because this needs a separate case. Remember, a case is a set of things that happen in a particular situation. These 3 actions are the case that will happen when people are selecting the dress size. Now we need another case for the set of things that happen when you're unselecting the dress size. That means I've got to enable cases, and I will say select 6M. That's the name of my case. It reminds me that I'm selecting the dress size. Now I need to add another case. I'm going to call this unselect 6M. Now Axure says, great, you have a case. Now what? Well, first let's put some actions on there and then we'll write our condition. Because the conditions here get a little slippery, but if you've taken core skills, you should have an idea of what they're going to be. So first, let's undo the 3 things that we did. Remember, if you did 3 things, you want to undo 3 things. So first, we'll say set selected of this widget to false. Make sure you've got the opposite. If you leave this as true, it's going to look truly selected. So set false, don't pick toggle. We talked about that in core skills. So, and remember, you can eyeball this. Make sure that what's happening down here in the unselect case is opposite of what happened up here in the select case. Now we did add filter. Now we want to do remove filter. Here it is. Remove filter. Which repeater was filtered? Dresses. Remember, the chips is not getting the filters. The chips is getting the add rows. Hey, Axure says, okay, do you want me to remove all the filters or just the size 6 one? Cool, just the size 6 one. And what else do we have to do? Remove the row from the chips repeater, which will make the chip disappear. And, where is it? Delete rows. Delete row from the chips repeater. Now Axure says, okay, how do you want me to remove the row? Do you want me to remove it based on what number it is in the data set? Do you want me to remove it because you marked it? And we're not really going to totally talk about marked stuff this time. That and pagination we're not totally covering. Or do you want to give me a rule? And we can go, yeah, we can give you a rule. Our rule would be, if the chip says 6M, that's the one we want to remove. If it says anything else, that's not the one we're trying to remove. So let's go and do that. So we need to find our column, which is called item.id. We could have named it item.name or whatever. In the chips repeater, everything is item.id. That's it. I didn't name it anything else. But you can see down here, they're giving you a clue of the syntax, the way this has to be written to function correctly. If item ID equal apostrophe, so a single quote, that's not a double quote or a full quote or a virgolette. This is a single quote, 6M. Now this is where you have to write exactly what is on the other thing. So make sure if you typed it manually, make sure you get it right here. So which chip do you want me to remove? The one where the item.id equals, so it's an exact match, in single quotes, 6M. So keeping that on my screen a little bit. Now, we didn't write a condition. If you go to run this right now, it's going to seem broken because we didn't tell Axure when to do each of these cases. Remember, that's part of the function of the condition. Hey, if people are clicking this with the intention, notice I said if, that means we need a condition. If people are clicking this with the intention of selecting it, do this. If people are clicking it with the intention of unselecting it, do this. That means we need conditions. How are we going to do that? What do you think we can tell Axure to look for to understand people's intentions? One good way to do that is to try to take a look at the starting point for an object that's going to be selected or unselected. So I'm clicking Add Condition. And I'm saying, hey, Axure, take a look at this thing. Is it unselected, which should be selected false? Is it unselected? Well, if it's unselected and people are clicking it, they must intend to select it. That's a good condition to write when you're talking about things that are getting selected and unselected. A great condition is, what state is it in now? Hey, is this false selected, which is unselected? Well, and a good way to eyeball this and check it would be, is the condition opposite of what you're telling Axure to do? So a mistake here that I often see is, if selected of this equals true. Okay, well, if this is truly selected and people click on it, make it truly selected. No, wait a minute, that's not going to work. It was already selected. This is going to break. So eyeball your stuff and you can see, if this is unselected, selected false, clicking on this would select it true. Now, what about a condition for down here? One of the neat things about if and else is if only two things can happen here, either this happens, it gets selected, or this happens, it gets unselected, we're done. We don't have to write the opposite condition. You can write it for practice, but Axure is basically going to say, look, if this condition is met, I'm going to run this case and I'm going to stop. Because it's this or else this. If this case isn't met, I'll try this one. So the else if true can work here, but again, for practice, you could write if selected of this equals true for the second condition. Now, I may have written this all wrong. Let's do a save and let's do a refresh and test it out. Click to select it, dresses change, 6 chip shows up. When I click this again, those 3 things should undo. Click 6M. No, I got it wrong. I had it add to it. So I got that wrong, which means I need to troubleshoot what mistake I've made. Let's take a look. Well, it looks like Axure completely bit it and didn't say, did I click cancel by mistake at the end there? That's a mess. So let me quickly write this. Did I somehow click cancel at the end? That's weird, but that's okay. I know that I can write this I can change this very quickly, and everybody will just have to watch me do this again. And maybe that'll help somebody, but sorry about that. I hope did everybody's turn out better than mine? Did you click OK where I probably canceled out by mistake? Unselect 6M, don't need the condition. And I'm going to quickly say set selected. Sorry, I get slow mouse when I'm sharing my screen like this, and I don't know why. It's only Axure. Set selected of this to false. Remove the filter on the dresses repeater. And delete the row by the rule from the chips repeater. Did everybody's work? Is anybody working along with me? I know we have like 10 or so people watching live. Item.id. By the way, if you know what you're doing, you can just type it here. You don't have to go into the function, but you know, not everybody's comfortable with that. I'm going to press OK. Okay, there it is. That looks better. Let's give it a try. And select it and unselect it. Yes. Okay, now it's working. Selected. There's my dress has changed. My chip appears. And click it again. This looks unselected, which is our select false. The dresses came back and the chip is gone. Anybody need help with that before we take a quick 5-minute bathroom break before we go for another giant block of time? I'll just flip back to my screen quickly. Okay, so if everybody is cool with that, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I absolutely want to answer them. Yes, I can troubleshoot without seeing your screen. I've seen the same mistakes over and over. Describe your problem to me. I'll probably know what happened. But we're just going to take 5 minutes from now so that everybody can get a quick bathroom break. So start your countdown timer. Yes, I had to add a space between 6 and M for the row to disappear. Yes, what Malika said. So remember, it's whatever you typed onto the chip. It has to match exactly. If your chip says 6 space M, then to remove it, you have to look for the chip that says 6 space M. So you know, it's got to be an exact match. That's what equals equals means. So yeah, good troubleshooting your own file there. Okay, I'm putting 5 minutes on my phone timer. You can do the same. And I'm going to mute my microphone and just leave this running because I can't pause the stream. And I will be back in 5 minutes for us to continue working on filters and sorts and searches and a lot more. Thanks. Start. Okay, we've got about 40 seconds left on break, so let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, we are going to now work on clicking the chip to remove the chip so that we can kind of come full circle on our creating the filter and removing the filter. So let's do it. Okay, delete. Is that the right button? Okay, great. All right, and if you have any other questions, let me know, because again, I know this is really advanced. I have to say I'm always amazed at people who teach Axure, and they take a total newbie to Axure and they try to teach repeaters to them, you know, in the first few hours. And I always feel like we need to work up to that. So those of you who've taken some or all of my core skills, hopefully feel a little bit more confident. Some people who haven't taken that and are jumping in pretty cold, you might feel a little cold. So hopefully this is working for people. Okay, so let's keep building. Let's see, let's press all the buttons here. How about this? Yes, okay, great. Okay, so on the assumption that that is working, then we need to build it so that if people click on the chip, that we are removing the correct chip and undoing the right filters and other stuff. Now, there's a couple of things we need to do here that will make this a little bit easier on ourselves. Number one, let's go into the model for the chips repeater for a moment. Now, there's a couple of ways to approach what I'm going to do next. This is made up of lots of little pieces. We have a rectangle, we have a label, and we have an X. Not really for any good reason. I just made this so long ago that that's what it is. I'd probably make it differently today. But we want to make sure that the next stuff we do happens no matter where people click on the chip. Now, in Core Skills, we talked about how many people will select all of these pieces, group them, and build the interactions on the group. But if you saw my Core Skills videos, then you know I am a serial ungrouper. I see things grouped and I go, why is that grouped? And then I ungroup it and I lose all of my interactions. So just to save myself from my own bad habits, what I do instead is I use a hotspot. There's nothing wrong with using a hotspot. It's a little old school, but it works just fine and it keeps you from making a mistake later. So I drag out a hotspot and I cover the hotspot over the entire chip. This is also nice because if you have a really slim chip, you could also create a larger tappable area and be more finger and mouse friendly. So I am a fan of the hotspot, which in Axure 10 has a blue mask and in the old Axure had a green one. So that means that all of the interactions we write to deal with clicking on a chip will be written on the hotspot. So don't make the mistake of writing the interactions on the X and the rectangle and the label. You just need to put a hotspot over everything, and wherever people click in that rectangle, this interaction will go off. So make sure when we're in here and we're writing interactions, make sure check over here in your Write Interactions pane, make sure it says hotspot. Otherwise, mistake town. Now let's make this easy for ourselves. Let's close out of this for a moment and I'll zoom back out. Let's go over to our 6 medium. How can we make this easier for ourselves? Well, isn't unselecting the 6M box kind of the same thing as clicking on the chip? We need to unselect the 6M, we need to remove the filter, and we need to delete the chip. It's pretty close. It's not exact. We are going to have to fix it. But copy and paste can probably save us a little bit of time. So let's do that. Let's take this. So click on this so that you're getting the whole thing over here. Don't just click on set selected or this or remove filter. Click up here where it says the name of your case, and you should see a box around the whole case. It'll have its own unique color on the left. And I'm going to right click or context menu click, and I'm going to say copy. Everybody got, if you don't know how to copy paste, let me know, but you should be able to do control or remember open Apple, everybody? C, and then we can paste it. Where are we going to paste it? Let's go back to the chips repeater. Here, the action happens on the chips repeater. By the way, real quickly, notice I have, let's go into the chips repeater. Notice I have item loaded, blah, blah, blah. This is old school stuff. I don't need this anymore. When you can do this connect to the widget, you don't need this. But this is the old school stuff. Hey, when the item loads, write the name on the thing. Excuse me. I don't need that anymore, thanks to Axure 10's version of doing that. So remember, that was the old school way. We learned it on the dresses. Now this is the newer way when it works. Okay, so over here on the hotspot, we're saying if someone clicks on the chips repeater, we want some actions to happen. Let's see what happens if I just click on the hotspot and click paste by doing Control V on my keyboard. Ooh, okay, I got the interaction up there. Now, it came without a condition, and it still needs to be fixed. There's a couple of things here that are wrong. The more advanced Axure people will recognize that. But let's double click so we can go into this and we can write the correct condition and fix what's wrong. So I'm going to double click here to go into my editor. Let's start by adding a condition. Hey Axure, I only want you to do this. What's the right condition? Who can tell me? I will tell you. I only want you to do this if the chip says 6M, or in Malika's case, 6 space M, or whatever you've written. So, hey Axure, take a look at my chip. What does my chip say? So we could say, this would be, and again, an easy way to do that would be, let's try it a few different ways. Let's see what works. Hey Axure, what's the text of the bracket bracket item.id bracket bracket? So remember, that's calling into the repeater row data, whether or not people see it. Hey Axure, does the text on this repeater row say 6M? Now again, for me, it's 6M. For Malika, it might be 6 space M. However you wrote it out for the size. Maybe some of you just wrote 6. So, hey Axure, does the repeater, people are clicking on this, but are they clicking on the one where the data set says 6M? If so, I've got a bunch of things I need you to do. Now, we'll find out later if that's the right condition, but let's eyeball and fix the other stuff first, and then we'll see if things are working, and maybe it's the wrong condition, and we'll have to try something else. That's fine. Great to break things and troubleshoot them. So first of all, set selected this to false. What's this? Remember, this is always whatever we're operating on or working on right now. That means this right now is the hotspot on the chip. Do we care if the hotspot on the chip is selected or not? No, we want to go over to the 6M thing. We want the 6M box over in the left column. We want that to be unselected. Okay, so let's find that. What did I name it? I named it size 6M text. When we mouse over it, it should look like a box with a 6M in it. Well, it's a box. Yes, I think this is the box. So find the thing that says size 6M text. And we want that to be selected false. Not toggle. So remember, we're saying, hey, when someone clicks on the chip and they mean to remove the chip, because you're not adding a chip, they're clicking on the chip to remove the chip, we need to go over here in the column to the 6M text and make that look unselected. So that's that visual styling. remove filter, dresses repeater, and delete the rows. Now notice I've got an extra choice here that I didn't have before because I'm operating inside of the repeater. Looky here what I have. Now hypothetically this rule should work, but what would be even easier? This. This is whatever people clicked on. If they're clicking on this, this is the row we remove from the chips repeater. Again, you could do it by the rule. There's nothing wrong with that. But you could also say, remove the row they're clicking on. So, hey Axure, if people click on this chip and it's the 6M chip, then unselect 6M, remove the dresses filter, and remove this chip. Is that making sense to everybody? I know we only have 6 or 8 people here. It's a long lesson today. Let me know if that makes sense. Let's baby step test it. So I'm going to save and I'm going to refresh and I'm going to add it from the box down here. So I'm going to add the filter. We saw the dresses change. We see the selected true style. We see the chip. Notice the chip is now a finger. It's linked. It can do something. So what do we expect? Whenever I test something, I first ask myself, what do I expect to happen? When I click that chip, I expect the chip to go away. I expect the dresses filter to change. And I expect this thick box to go away because it's no longer the selected thing. Let's see if it works. Pow. Pew, 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 pew. Okay, I'm going to take a drink of water while I ask you, do you need any help with that? Did anybody's chip removing stuff not work? I'll tell you a newbie mistake here is not including this condition. The condition here is going to be really important later because next we're going to add one of the pricing filters. But they're still clicking on the same hotspot to get rid of the price filter. How's Axure going to know which thing to do? Axure knows because of the conditions. Hey, if someone is clicking on this thing and it's the 6M, here's the set of things that I do. And if someone's clicking on this thing and it's the price thing, I do a different set of things. So the typical mistake there is not including the condition, which right now will look like it works, but then when we build more filters, stuff will start breaking. So let me know if you have any questions to this point if you're here watching live. Yeah. Okay, let's do price. Now notice, just for funkiness sake, notice when you click on the price, this has a funky name. This is called price level 3. So when you go to find it later in your interactions, it's not called 100 to 250. You'll just have to know that it's a checkbox and it's called price level 3. So when we look for it later, there you go. Now, one thing we don't have to do here necessarily is we don't have to say set selected true and false because checkboxes are automatically selected. So for example, if I come back here and I click on this, that's checkbox selected true. If I uncheck it, that's checkbox selected false. So if people are clicking on the checkbox itself, we don't have to worry about that. But we will have to worry about that if they remove it from the chip, because then removing it from the chip has to uncheck it over here. Axure really makes you start to think of all of these microscopic moments that we take for granted. All right, so let's build the filter and the interactions if people click on this. And again, we're going to have to build 2 cases. One is they're clicking on this because they want to select it, and one is they're clicking on this because they want to unselect it and remove the filter. So let's select the first price. Let's go into the editor, which I'm doing from this icon up here, the interaction editor. And we'll start with And again, with checkboxes, we learned in core skills why sometimes you don't want to use selected or unselected. On this particular page, selected and unselected will work. So we can say, that means we don't have to write the condition. We don't have to say if this is selected because it's built into Axure's event, the trigger. Hey, if this is selected, which means someone checked the box, that's it. So the condition's kind of built in. What should we do? We need a filter and we need a chip. So add filter, dress as repeater on the price. It's not equals. What is it, right? Because you would think that it's going to be greater than or less than or something, but the problem is that if I say greater than, how do I also tell it it's between two numbers? That's where this gets funky. I've got some notes on this. Here we go. So there, as you notice, there isn't something that says price is between. That would be great. It doesn't exist. So we have to use the old school way, the Axure 9 way, to write a very precise set of instructions to Axure. Now, the first time I saw this, I fell out of my chair and I said, I don't want to be a programmer. But, you know, Axure has programming in its heart. And even if you don't want to be a programmer, like I don't want to be a programmer, you have to think like one. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to tell Axure, you know what? It's really, I got a custom thing I got to tell you to do. I got something I got. Now look at this. Axure guesses. Do you want the price to be lowercase? I don't even know what this means. I don't even know what this means. But I do know I don't want to remove other filters. I do want to keep using those smart filters. But I've got to write a better function than this. This isn't what I want. This is changing something to lowercase. I don't want that. We need to tell Axure the item price must be greater than or equal to 100, and the price must be less than or equal to 250. This is where having a logical brain or being good at logic really helps, because you have to think that out and say, okay, what does it mean to be between 100 and 250? It means greater than or equal to 100, and it means less than or equal to 250. Okay, that will get me 100 to 250. How do we tell Axure that? Let's get rid of this. I don't need that either. Let's start with the item price. So I'm just going to go in here and say, give me item price. Okay, now I have to stay inside the brackets on this. Nothing should be outside the brackets because remember, outside the brackets were the text Axure was going to show people. We don't need that. Everything happens inside your brackets. So notice I've moved my cursor inside my brackets. Hey Axure, I need the item price to be greater than or equal to 100. Okay, so I hope everybody took math at some point. I need the item price to be greater than or equal to 100 and do ampersand, ampersand. And I need item dot price to be less than or equal to 250. Is that ugly and a little bit complicated? A little bit. Does it make sense if you spend a little time and think about it? Sure. I need the item price to be greater than or equal to 100, and I need the item price to be less than or equal to 250. It'll give us all the dresses whose price, and again, you can see why I didn't put the $ in the metadata, because that would really mess with this, because now I'm dealing with numbers and greater thans, and if you have a $ in there or a euro sign, Axure's gonna choke. So I can say that. Now again, we could baby step test right now. Even if we don't do the chip yet, let's baby step test. Let's give a look at it. And How will we know it's working? Because all of these dresses that are not between 100 and 250 should go away. You should only end up with dresses that are between 100 and 250. The cheaper ones should go and the more expensive ones should go. That's how a filter works. Let's try it. Boom. So again, we didn't tell it to create the chip, so you won't see your chip, but you should see your dresses change. You should see your dresses get filtered, and if you scroll through them, you should only see ones that are between 100 and 250. So I've got 139, 198, 239, 109, 230. That's what you should see. Did anybody working along with me find that that didn't work? Problems, questions? Because next we'll add the chip. Okay. Let's add the chip. We're not done. So I'm going to double click on this so that I can go back into my editing of the interaction and I can say, hey, excuse me, I have another action for you. You added the filter, cool, but I also need you to add the chip. And remember, adding the chip means adding a row to the chip's repeater. Add row, slow mouse, chip's repeater. What are we adding? Add rows. Now remember, the one way is to manually write stuff in here. I want this to say $100 space dash space $250. You can do that. I can also say function, add local variable, lvar1 is text on widget this. What's text on widget this? We talked about that in core skills. It's whatever the heck this widget says. What's this widget? The checkbox. What does the checkbox say? The checkbox says $100 space dash space 250. So if we said bracket bracket lvar1 bracket bracket, Axure will say, you know, I'm just going to go grab whatever this thing says and I'm going to slap it on the chip. Okay. So that's, again, an easier way. If you like what your thing says that the user sees, you can just say, give me the text on that. Someone's going to say, show me that again. So again, if we go to functions and we say add local variables, lvar1 is text on this widget, text on widget this, and then we just have to write bracket bracket lvar1 bracket bracket, and Axure will drop that in place. We can test this. We can see if we get a chip that says the thing. Let's go. Checkbox. Pow! Okay, so again, we haven't removed it from the checkbox or removed it from the chip, but you can see how that is working. Did anybody have their chip not show up? Is anybody working along with me? I know we've got 7 or 8 people, and if you're coming in late, we are, you know, please start the video from the beginning. You've missed like 2 hours of stuff. I don't even know if any of you are working along with me, but I'm going to assume if there's no questions, everybody found a way for that to work. If you're watching this video later and you're having some trouble, roll it back and try to copy what I do. Pause and copy. Okay, now we want to operate on the checkbox and undo this. So if people unselect this checkbox, we need to remove the filter and remove the chips row. So let's double click and go in. Now the mistake here is people go, okay, add an action, remove the filter. Thanks, Manuel. Hey, remove the filter. Hey, not so fast. We need a different event first because we are operating in separate worlds. These would have been cases, but Axure builds the cases into the event. Don't add the action. Go back to add event and say, this is what happens if this checkbox is unselected. So if the checkbox is unselected, we want to remove the filter, from the dresses repeater. Remember, the dresses are what we're filtering, not the chips. And Axure assumes it's the last one you worked on. Hey, do you want to remove this item price one? Yes. How about we delete a row from the chips repeater? Yes, delete the chip means deleting a row from the chips repeater. Not that we'll write the rule again. So what should it be? Text on this is going to be the easiest way to go. Add local variable. lvar1 is text on widget this, lvar1. So again, this saves us from the possible mistakes like Malika had before where, oops, I wrote 6 space m, but sometimes I wrote 6m without the space. If you can just use text on widget this, it's always going to be whatever that checkbox or box or wording says so that you don't have to worry that you've written it different ways at different times. It also means if you change the text later, this will automatically change, which is nice. So hey Axure, remove the chip that says the text on this checkbox. Whatever chip says what this checkbox says, that's the one to remove. All right, let's try it. Refresh. Okay, select, cool, unselect. Okay, my chip didn't go away, so I have a chip mistake. The other stuff worked. Let me take a closer look at what happened to my chips. Oops. I see what I did wrong. I didn't write an appropriate expression. I didn't tell Axure where to look for lvar1. I just said, hey, lvar1, text on the checkbox. I didn't tell it where to find that. Now, for the chips repeater, the only column we have is item ID. So this should have said item.id equals equals. That was my mistake. I forgot to say, hey, I need you to I have a rule here. The rule is this equals this, or this is greater than this, or this, it's got to be some sort of expression where it's comparing one thing to the other. That was the mistake I made. Easy mistake to make. I got so excited about my lvar. But again, I love making mistakes during these lessons. Then I can troubleshoot them and try again. Alexa says all good. Cool. All right, so let's check the box again. Yes. And now when we uncheck it, we will also want to make sure the chip is gone. Yes. And then now we'll go and do it all from the chip. We'll say if the chip gets removed, boom. I'm not going to do copy paste this time. I'm going to write it manually just for practice, just so everybody can see what I'm doing in slow motion. So now to build on the chip, I've got to go into the chip model and make sure I'm on the hotspot. We're going to add another case. If people are clicking on the hotspot, but they're clicking on the 100 to 250, here's what I need you to do, Axure. And we're going to also, it's going to be 3 things. So let's say we want to add a case. I'm going to call this case unselect 100 to 250. Again, just a nice clear name that makes sense to me or anybody who sees my file in the future. I like to future-proof. But what is that condition? Hey, Axure, let's check what's written on the chip. Is the text value of bracket bracket item.id bracket bracket, so again, that's the dynamic data in that chip row in the repeater. Does it equal, hold on, what's going to go here? Is it text on widget this? No, we can't do text on widget this because this is the hotspot. The hotspot has no text on it. We have to say text on widget, that checkbox over there. Here's how we do that. Here's how that goes. We start with add local variable, and we get our lvar1 text on widget, and then Axure goes, I really don't know what text, what widget you're talking about. What widget are you talking about? That's where we've got to find price level 3. Remember I said, remember that I named this checkbox something a little funky, and we're going to need it later? This is price level 3 text. Hey Axure, does this say price level 3 text bracket bracket lvar1 bracket bracket? So lvar1 is the local variable, is just shorthand. lvar1 is the text on the widget, price level 3 checkbox. Hey Axure, is the text in the item ID, so that the repeater data, is the repeater data the same as this checkbox over here? If so, there's some stuff I need you to do. What do we need Axure to do? Oops, let's double click and go into our case editor. Click down here, and we've got 3 things we need Axure to do. We needed to uncheck that checkbox. We didn't need that last time because clicking on the checkbox itself did that automatically. Now we need to manually uncheck that checkbox. That means we want set, selected, or checked. I'm just going to write the number 3 so I can easily find price level 3 text. And remember to change it to false. This is going to be your common mistake. You forget to change it to false. True will check the checkbox. False will uncheck the checkbox. So thing 1, uncheck the checkbox. And make sure you've unchecked the correct checkbox, price level 3. Next, remove the filter. Jump down here, remove filter, not from the chips, always removing filter from dresses. And price, good, that's the one we want. And then finally, delete this row from chips. Delete rows, chips repeater, this. This is whatever they click on. Whatever the hell that is, that's the one Axure will remove. That should work. Now I can eyeball this. Okay, if item ID is the text over on checkbox 3, then let's just try it. I got a good feeling, but I could get it wrong, and that's cool too. So let's refresh. We'll check off the checkbox to create the filter, and then we'll click the chip to remove the filter. Okay, let me give you a little time to see if yours is working. Let me know if yours didn't work. I'm getting a private message from a friend who says, "This is brilliant. Axure is really brilliant." Thank you, friend. Okay, nobody asked a question, so we're going to baby step test something else while we're here. You know it. Let's put on both filters and let's try clicking the chips and making sure that these things can be added and removed in all different order, which is where that realism comes in. So I can add this filter. I can add this filter. Whoa, now I've got very few dresses. 3, 6, 9, 10. And now let's say I remove this filter first. Uh-oh, it removed both. What did I do wrong? Let's check my notes. See if I've got a clue here. All right, does anybody know what I did wrong? Page 17. That should work. It matches my notes. Let's see if it works the other way around. Let's see. If I say, let's refresh. If I do size 6 and then this, what if I remove size 6? It only removed one. Okay, so something about clicking on the price one removed both. Let's try to troubleshoot that. Did anybody else have that happen, or is it just me? And did other things? Okay, let's see. So where am I getting this wrong? Somewhere Axure thinks it needs to remove both rows. I might want to change this to rule and see if that helps. But let's see. Woof. If item ID is lvar1 and lvar1 is price 3 level text, I mean, this should work. It should work with just this. Did anybody else have this happen? Happened to me. Okay, so I've built something incorrectly, and we will figure out what it is. And let's see, I put both of them on, and I removed this. That's weird. When it was second, it worked well, and when it was first, it did not work well. So if this is second, that works. But if it's first, that's so weird. But it didn't remove the filter, it just removed the chips. So that tells me this is something in the deleting the chip thing, because it didn't remove the wrong filter. So let's just get really specific with the chips repeater. Let's try giving it a rule where let's see, text on widget, price 3, lvar1, and I have to go back here and say item ID equals. Let's see if that helps. Let's see if being really specific about which chip I wanted deleted helps us. Okay, price, size. Okay, that seemed to work. So remember, hypothetically, the way that we wrote that absolutely should have worked, but sometimes things get funky, and you just have to troubleshoot it and try to figure out where it's breaking down. So that's why I checked each thing individually. Hey, did it uncheck the checkbox? Did that work? Yeah, it unchecked the checkbox. That's not my problem. Hey, did it remove too many filters? It's removing too many chips. Did it remove too many filters? No, it removed the right filters. Okay, so it's removing too many chips. I better just be really specific about which chips to remove, see if that solves it. And again, you can't go wrong being really specific about which chips to remove. You just can't. We might find out later it's better to do that for the 6M also. So again, you can't go wrong here being more specific with Axure. That's just the case. Alexis, did yours unbreak? Did yours do better when you went in and changed what I changed, where we got more specific about exactly which chip to remove? I hope so. Anybody have any questions or problems up to this point? Because now we've done 2 filters and we've made them work with the chips. We've made it look like we're passing information from one repeater to another, even though it was kind of manual and behind the scenes, but it felt very lifelike and realistic. This would be great for usability testing. Now, why did we build this? Why did I spend so much time building this for Macy's usability testing? Because we wanted the usability testing to be realistic. And we realized if we told people, it went worse, Alexis says. What happened? What did it do? We realized if we told people you want a black size 6 dress to wear to a wedding, and people chose filters at different orders and took them off in different orders. We couldn't have faked that out. You couldn't fake that out in Sketch or Figma or whatever. So we had to make it realistic. Anyway, we'll have to rewind to see which one you changed. Yeah, let me quickly show you which one I changed. That was over in Chip Universe. On the hotspot, I changed the delete rows for the unselect the money one. And I changed the delete row from this, because this evidently made it go all funky, to item ID equals LVAR1, but remember you always have to go into the FX to define what LVAR1 is, because LVAR1 is always a shortcut to something else that you mean. So here it's LVAR1 is the text on the widget price level 3, which is whatever the checkbox says. It deleted both when I clicked on the price. Yes, that's what was happening before, but now mine's not doing that now that I got really specific about which chip I wanted it to delete when someone clicks the chip. Anybody else having another problem? And again, if Alexis, if yours isn't working perfectly right now, you can roll it back later. Just remember we are at 2 hours, 28 minutes in. So just roll back to that. Okay, so there's definitely some other filters to build, but let's just switch gears a little bit just to freshen up our brain a little bit. Let's build our sorts just to practice with the sorts, and then we can always come back to the color filter. There's still a lot more to do here. Let's take a look at our sorts. So now I have these set up so that they just look like underlined text, but they have a selected style. When they are selected true, then they will look black and bold and not underlined. Otherwise, they'll look blue and underlined. Who remembers from core skills what we have to do so that Axure knows if one of these is selected true, the other is automatically selected false? Who remembers there can be only one? Selected at a time. Who remembers? Okay, so I'm not waiting 40 seconds to see who remembers. It's a selection group, or if this were a radio button, a radio group. So I'm going to select these two things because they have that relationship where only one can be selected true at a time. And over here in interactions, I'm going to say show all, and I'll give the selection group a name. And I've done this before. You might even see it in yours. It's called sort labels. But you can name it whatever you want. You could name it sort, you could name it price and title. As long as you give these both the same selection group name, they will act like toggles in that one looks selected, the other looks unselected, and so on. So let's build a price sort. When people click price, it will sort by price. Now you'll notice when we build this that Axure has ascending sorts and descending sorts. Great for if you're doing data tables or a lot more sorting options. For example, you might do a drop list and you might say sort low to high, sort high to low. Axure can handle that. But for here, we're just going to do a price low to high and we're going to do a title A to Z. But you can try more to practice your skills. Okay, let's build an interaction on price. The event is click or tap. What's going to happen? Sort the dresses repeater. So here in the repeater, not set current page, that's for pagination, which we're not learning. We want add sort. Which repeater? Dresses. Okay, Axure says, all right, which column am I sorting by? Not the image. You are sorting by price. Okay, what is this thing? Is it alphabet? Is it numbers? Is it a date? We'll tell them it's numbers. And we'll tell them this will be ascending, low to high. And yes, when they do the sort, remove the other sorts. I don't want the sorts to add on to each other. You could do that for a data table where you have sort the first column and then sort the second column with the first column still sorted. Here, this is e-commerce. We don't need that. So I will say remove other sorts. Whoop. What happened? I'm here now. How'd that happen? All right. Somehow that got erased. I'm definitely having some buggy moments. Let me rebuild that really quickly. So that was add sort. On the dresses repeater, if you got yours happening, give it a baby step test. Let me know if your sort worked. Should be price, numeric, ascending. Okay. Oh, that's weird. Mine is like semi-crashing. Always press save a lot, everybody. All right, let's see. Let's refresh. And again, all that should happen is when we click price, it should look selected and all the stuff will get reordered. Price. Oop, I forgot to say select true. Okay, so it doesn't look selected. Fix that. But my sorting is definitely working because the fake price we put on the cheapest dress was $35. So you can see these are now in price order, but I need to add another action telling Axure to make price look selected true. So let's do that. If your sorting didn't work, let me know, but that's usually an easy one. So hopefully that worked. So I'm going to add to price. I'll double click and I will say, oh yeah, and by the way, set selected of this to true. And again, this works because this is price and we want price to look selected. So try again, refresh, price. There we go. Now that's the selected style. You might not like it. You might want to style these differently. You might want them in a drop list. Totally up to you. We just want to learn the technique of dealing with the repeaters, and then you can always change how things look or lay out yourself. So yeah, okay, great. Let's do sort by title just to practice another sort. So I'm coming over to title. Can make it a little narrower. And I will say new interaction, click, add sort, dresses repeater. This time by the title, not by screenshot or price, so choose carefully. It is alphanumeric, there's letters here. And I don't, okay, there's no numbers here, but maybe if there were numbers, you would just leave it alphanumeric. We do want it to be ascending. We do want to remove other sorts. And let's not forget, set selected of this to true. That way, title looks like it has been selected. It won't have that blue underlined look. So again, your two actions here are adding a sort to the dresses repeater, with removing the other sort, and set selected of this title to true. Save. I'm always pressing save. Refresh. And now these should be alphabetical, starting with Alfani. So you should see you have that in alphabetical order, though not necessarily price. And then you could say you want your dresses in price order. So it's price, but not alphabetical. And you could just, this acts a little bit like a toggle, flipping back and forth. Let me know if your sorting didn't work before we move on to some other stuff. Okay, I'm going to move on, but if I see anything come up in the chat where anyone has a question or problem, of course I'll stop and answer that. So let's work on another aspect of this before we get to our color filter. Let's take a look at two things that are going to kind of happen together, because that's something I learned from the peeps at Axure. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just to show you the bigger picture of this page. So at the very top of the page, we have a count of how many items there are. There aren't 48, there are 22, so we need to fix that. And then we have the fake footer at the bottom, which represents anything that might be under this on the page. Could be anything. So we need to make sure of two things. We need to make sure that the footer is moving up so that the page gets shorter and we don't have that blank space. and we need Axure to count the correct number of dresses. These can happen together because of Axure telling me to put this in a dynamic panel. Now, why would putting the repeater in a dynamic panel help? Axure's idea in 2013, and who knows, there might be a better way to do this now, but Axure's idea in 2013 was, what if the size of the panel changed? Well, if you had fewer or more items, the size of the panel would change because the amount of dresses inside the panel would change. And then we could do some interactions based on, ooh, the size of the panel changed. So why is that important? Because if we go to the repeater, so now I'm on the repeater itself. Let's take a look at some of the actions that we can do on a repeater. Well, we can only look at, did a repeater load? And did the repeater, so a repeater's item size is changed. What did that mouse over say? A little helpful tip. A repeater's item size is changed. So that means that's not the whole repeater changing its size. That's just our model. Did the model size change because of something happening? So that doesn't give us what we need, which is, did this whole mass of things change its height because of how many items are in it? That's where the dynamic panel becomes our sneaky buddy. So with the dynamic panel, we want to make sure that it is fit to content, which we talked about in the core skills class. Make sure the dynamic panel, which I called dresses repeater panel, is fit to content. That means if there's 10 dresses, the panel will fit to that content and get smaller. If there's 1,000,000 dresses, the panel will fit to that content and get longer. But the great thing is that because that size becomes dynamic, we can write interactions because, check it out, the dynamic panel has an event or a trigger, which is, did this thing change size? Oh, look at that. Yes, right. Okay, we added filters. Some dresses got removed. The panels fit to content. The panel changed size to fit to the content. Hey, now we need Axure to move up the placeholder and recount our dresses. Will it always work? It's a little bit flawed. If you have rows of 3 and you go from 9 dresses to 8 dresses, the height didn't change. It's imperfect, but for the purposes of prototyping, it's probably good enough because it's a prototype. It's not the way you would release it to the public, but it'll work for prototyping sake, and maybe later you'll figure out an even better way to do it. So hey Axure, what should we do if this panel gets resized? Well, 2 things. We'll do them in baby steps. The first thing is, hey, can you move that website footer placeholder? It's called website footer placeholder. Can you move that thing? Now you might say, uh-oh, how do we know how much to move that thing? Uh-oh, help. No problem. I'm going to show you how we can use some behind the scenes math to know where to move that thing. So first of all, we're not going to do by. By is relative. Move something this many pixels. We don't know. I'm going to say move 2. I want you to move 2 exact coordinates. Now, what about our x coordinate? Well, this thing isn't moving right and left, so the x coordinate is wherever the x coordinate is now. Hopefully everybody knows their x and their y coordinates. So if I want this to just use whatever this x value is right now, I have a very simple thing I can do. I can type this dot x, bracket, bracket. Literally, that's it. I'll show you that in the big version. That's it. This dot x says the x coordinate of where this is now. So that will keep it in a perfect vertical line. That's my x coordinate. Basically, I'm saying wherever it is now, x-wise, keep it there. What about the y? The y is going to change. And I would like it to change relative to the bottom of the dynamic panel. I can say, ooh, give me 100 pixels beyond the bottom of this panel. Ooh, we're going to have to do a little math. Let's go into our fx, our function, get rid of this 0, and start doing some math. First, we need an LVAR because we need a shortcut. No, wait, we're on the dynamic panel. We don't need that. It would be bracket, bracket, this dot bottom plus 100. Whoa, how did Debbie know that? Debbie knows that. We had this dot x, there's this dot y, there's this dot top, and this dot bottom. How do I know? They're all here. I can say, show me everything that starts with this. Oh, why is it just doing that? But I promise you, there is a this dot x, and this dot y, and this dot bottom, and this dot top. That gives you your left, right, top, bottom. I think you can also do this dot right. So that would give you all of the spots on that particular widget, which for us is the dynamic panel. So find me the bottom of this box and add 100. Let's take a look if that's working. We'll do some baby step testing there. So refresh. I'm going to zoom way out so we can try to see as much of this page as possible. So this is how it looks now. The bottom of this is, 80 or 100 away from the footer. Now when I create a filter, I should find that I don't have a giant block of blank space anymore. The bottom has moved up to be 100 below where the panel ended. I could add my other filter on here. Yep. Now it's moved up again, and hypothetically, if I remove these filters, it moves back down because it's always 100 below the bottom of the panel. So let me know if that worked for you. There we go. So that's one cool thing that we can do to make this a little bit more realistic. Would it have been the end of the world if we, was it Control 9 to do this thing? I always forget. Yeah, return to 0, 0, Control 9. Wouldn't have been the end of the world if we had all that blank space on the bottom. Just adds a little bit of realism that the page doesn't have a giant amount of blank space. Totally up to you. But wasn't that hard to build. Did anybody's not work? Because if Sarita, I didn't take the core classes, but I wanted to say Debbie makes it easy to follow along. Thank you. If you didn't take the core classes, I know I'm using some terms and ideas that are probably like a who, what? But yeah, better when you take the core classes, because then you get a little bit more of the why. So let's have Axure automatically, dynamically count how many items people are seeing in the repeater and give us that number here. Now to do that, we're going to need to know that this is a widget that I named item count text. So we're going to tell Axure to go into the item count text widget and change this number. Cool, Alexa says all good. Now I'm going to do that every time this thing changes. I'm going to do that whenever this height changes. It's probably because we changed the number of stuff. So let's have it do both things. We'll have it move up or down the website footer, and we'll have it recount the number of things and write that number there. Trina says, I have to go look at the core classes, but it's easy to follow along. Good, good. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so the action's going to happen on the dynamic panel. So we're going to add it to the whole, if this panel gets larger or smaller, let's count how many things we have and write that number here. So I'm going to double click on this to go back into the editor. And people often get confused when we're counting things in Axure. They think like, okay, where's the instruction that says count things? And that's not the way it works. In Axure, whenever you want Axure to write something somewhere, it's set text. Whether or not it's counting stuff. If this is about writing something somewhere, it's always set text. And then behind the scenes, we're going to tell it, get the number from the count. So set text. Where? What did I say that was called? That was called item count text. Now Axure says, ooh, do you know what you want it to say? Just type it here. And I say, no, I don't know what I want it to say. I'm going to have to do this dynamically. But there's another thing that we talked about in core skills that we're going to mention here. Notice that we have 48 written in red and the rest written in black. That's what Macy's wanted because their colors are red, gray, and black. Now, it's a little ugly, probably not colorblind friendly, but let's pretend that's what we have to do. Let's pretend the number is going to be in a different color than the rest of the sentence. We don't want text, we want rich text. Rich text lets us do a little bit of manual formatting on the text. So that opens up another window when we click Edit Text. So we don't want the number 48. We got to replace that. But with what? Where are we going to get this number from Axure? Okay, so I'm going to erase that and we'll worry about the color after. I'm going to say insert variable or function. Check out our repeater variables and functions. Visible item count or item count. And then page would be if you do pagination. So item count would be how many things are in the repeater total. We don't need that. That's 22. We want to know how many items can people see that haven't been filtered out. That's visible item count. Now, if we stop here, it'll work, but we won't get the color. So I'm going to scroll over this. Remember, you have to scroll over the brackets too, not just the words inside of it. And let's just pick a different color just for fun. I'm going to go with this wacky bright purple. Let's try that. Okay. Now, of course, this is going to change from red to purple. It's going to look ridiculous. And also, I know when this thing starts, there's 22. So do yourself a favor, double click on this and write 22. Because when we open up this page, it should say the right number by default. I'm just going to write that in manually rather than telling Axure, ooh, go count this thing for me. So there we go. I could write, when the page loads, how many items are in the repeater, write that number here. We could do that, but I can also manually do this. And just if you change how many things are in the repeater, you'd have to change this. That's why a lot of those, ooh, automatically do this are great to learn, but are certainly more advanced. Both will work. All right, let's give this a try. Let's see if we can get some good counts going. And that looks bad. Okay, what did I do? Oh, I didn't define LVAR1. I did it again. That is one of the most common mistakes that I and other people make. Remember that LVAR1 is always shorthand for something else. If you forget to define LVAR1, Axure goes, hey, look, I see your shorthand here, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be counting. You didn't tell me what I'm counting. So I'm going to go back in to the set text. I'm going back into the rich text, and I have to tell it, what's LVAR1? What am I counting? Am I counting chips? Am I counting dresses? Axure can't guess. So add local variable. No, we don't want text. We want an entire widget. This? No, this is a dynamic panel. We don't want this. We want the dresses repeater, not the dresses repeater panel. We want the dresses repeater with the table icon. That means we're getting the repeater itself, not the table not the panel it's in. All right, that was my mistake. It's a common mistake. Ooh, I got so excited about dropping in a variable and LVAR, I forgot to tell Axure what the LVAR even points to. But Axure gives you a little clue there by going, I didn't know what this was, so I just wrote LVAR1. You go fix that. So I'll hit save, and we'll hit refresh. It's counting for us now. Check that out. So it knows 22, and now if I say size 6, it says 16 dresses. If I say this price range says 10. If I undo the 6, it says you've got 14. And if I undo this, it should be back to 22. So that's how you can do like realistic search results count, whether those are data search results, like data in a table, like, ooh, filter out everyone who's a current customer, 34 current customers. So that's how you would have Axure do that. Remember, visible item count is how many people can see, despite there being based on what was filtered. And item count is everything that's in the repeater, whether or not there has been filters. Did that work for everybody? Are you getting your count looking good? Okay, so there's a couple of more lessons as part of repeaters. I would normally do a color filter and removing that color. And I would do... But you know, you could just practice with color because color is going to be contains. So how do I know color is going to be similar to the 6M? Because if we take a look at our repeater data set, let's take a look at how we would filter for each of these things. So for me, I would say color could be contains because, for example, if this dress is available in black and in gray, if I tell it equals black, this dress won't come up because this dress's metadata says black space gray. This would be a filter with contains. If you wanted to say only show me, like Amazon does, 4-star dress, 4-star stuff, 5-star stuff, you could, if you had just the integers, actually you'd still probably do greater than or equal to 4. So yeah, I think that you would know how to do these types of filters. Size is going to be contains. The price was the hard one because you had to write this complicated expression that said if the price is greater than equal and the price is this. That was the hard one, but all these other ones are probably just contains or a much simpler single expression of rating is greater than or equal to 4. That way people get 4 and 5-star. If we had different types, if the dress was great for being a wedding guest and wearing to work, then you could do contains, just like we did with the size 6. So you can practice with a lot of these filters and try the different types, practice removing them from the chips. You can also practice with having this be a filter. They click on where to work and they get the daytime work filtered out of that last column. So you've got lots of opportunities here. Even if you go in and change the data set, practice adding some things and seeing how you can do that. So you've got lots of opportunities here to practice, but there's still 2 more things for us to practice doing together. That's clearing all the filters and making the search work. So let's start with the easier one. How could we, and again, you might want a button, you might want a text link, you know, the styling here doesn't matter, it's the technique. So let's look at clearing filters. I plan to only be here for maybe another half hour, so make sure if you have repeater questions or I didn't get to what you were hoping to learn, ask me now so we can try to fit that in the next half hour. Okay, let's do clear filters. Now, the downside to clear filters is you have to take everything that can freaking happen on your page and you have to do it manually. Let's do it. So let's do this. If people click on it, let's start with the easy stuff. Remove filters. So go to Dresses Repeater and remove all the filters. Which filters do you want to remove? All. Easy peasy. That's the easy part. We can also do, now deleting all of the chips is a little harder. Let me show you the common mistake when people are still learning repeaters. Hey, I want to delete all of the chips repeater. Chips repeater. Hey, how come nothing here says all? Now what am I supposed to do? This is where marked becomes your friend. So let me delete this and let's do Axure deleted everything. Like I needed that. It's all right. It's fast for me to recreate because it was just all dresses. Now we're going to do mark rows. In the chips repeater, because we want to remove all the chips. Look at this, all. Hey Axure, mark all the rows. That means behind the scenes in Axure's robot brain, it's selecting all of the rows in your repeater. The user doesn't see this. This is behind the scenes. Now we can say delete rows, which one, chips repeater, and we can say marked. So yeah, it was an extra step. I don't know why it just doesn't say all here, but that only took us seconds. I can't totally complain. So, okay, remove all the filters on the dresses, take all the chips, mark all the chips rows, and just erase it. Erase all the rows in the chips repeater. The chips will go away. Now, we can baby step test that if we want. So let's do a quick baby step test. Save. Refresh. Size 6, low price, clear filters. Uh-oh, my chips are still there. Damn chips. My chips are extra grumpy today. Oh, Axure didn't save my command. Come on. I don't know why it's doing that. I wonder if there's a bug. I should send them this video. Mark rows. Well, at least you're going to see it again, just in case you weren't sure. All. Oh my gosh. It's being really crabby. Okay, let's try this again. Mark rows. Dresses repeater. All. Delete rows. I'm sorry, not dresses. I don't want to delete all the dresses. Alexis will stop me in about 40 seconds. Chips repeater. Okay. Now again, even if you had deleted all rows in the dress repeater, that would have been temporary. Once you refreshed, they would have all been there. Now delete rows in the chips repeater, the marked ones. Now please, when I click OK, please save it. No, look, it only saved mark rows. That's really weird. I'm definitely sending this to Axure later. What hour and stuff are we at? 2 hours 59. Chips repeater. Marked. Okay. Save, 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 save. All right, help me. All right, here we go. Refresh. So this is why I do the baby step testing, because if you start building a lot of stuff in Axure and then something's not working right, you're going to be like, what broke and where? So good to test it in steps. Nope, my chips are still there. Is anybody else having the same problem where your chips are still there? What did I do wrong? This doesn't look good. Oh, it didn't do all. Holy, y'all saw me hit all like 100 times, right? All right, let's do this again. This is why we do baby step testing, even when it makes us grumpy. Okay, thanks to whatever God you believe in. Okay, but we're not done, because we need to undo anything from the left side that we have said is selected true. That means we have to manually say selected false. That means if later on you come and practice on the 250 to 500, you're going to have to come down to clear filters and say, oh yeah, and uncheck 250 to 500. If you build on black and blue, you're going to come down here and say that. We should probably build on black. If we have time, we'll do that last, because I do have something funky happening there that we should talk about. Okay, so now we have to go in and add all of these manual set selected. So for example, set selected price level 3 to false. Remember to do it false. The mistake here would be to just leave it at true, which means true means truly selected, and you would be like, uh-oh, why didn't that uncheck? So we need price level 3 to be false. I can say add targets, which means I also need size 6M to be false. You have to say false every time. It is manual. And remember, we would hypothetically add to this color, the other price, guest of wedding, anything that you've set up to work. Here you have to manually say unselect these things manually. So let's take a look now. Six, check, clear. Great. So this got unchecked and the 6M now doesn't look selected. People often say to me, can't I just tell Axure to clear things? Look, Axure doesn't have any sense of what any of these things are and what you're doing. So the best way to go is just to manually tell it clear filters means uncheck this, set selected false, 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 undo all these things manually. If you have a lot of stuff, it takes time, but it's not difficult. So it takes time, not difficult. Let's talk about search. Let's imagine that we have a search box and we want it so that as people type into this, the dresses or the data underneath is filtering out live as you type. Really, so not predictive where it's going to drop down a menu of guesses of what you're typing, but literally just filter the stuff as you go. So let's click on, if you don't have a search box up here, again, all you need is to come over here to the library, scroll down and find text field, drag it out, doesn't matter where it is, just drag it on out. And give it a border just so there's a box around it and you can see it. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to find because it's invisible. So give it a little border up here or over here in style. And now we're going to build an interaction on it. So now you're thinking, this is a text field. When should Axure run this action? Well, the answer is text changed. So that means every time somebody types a character or removes a character, the text has changed, Axure will run this thing. All right, I played with this earlier today and I got it to work. Let's see if I can remember what I did. Okay, so we know it's a filter. So add filter. We know it's on the dresses repeater. That much I am confident of. We know it's not the screenshot. We know we're searching probably through the titles of the dresses. We know it's not going to be equals because people are writing partial words. So we know we're going to need a contains because we're talking about a part of the string. And it could be text on widget. But it wouldn't be text on widget search. That's the word search. We need search input. That's the box where people are typing. See, it's over here, and you can see in the top right, I named mine search input. If you don't have a name on yours, it's probably at the top of the list, and you'll see that it's an input field. So it might say text field or something like that. I don't know if this is going to work, but I got something like this working earlier. I'll check my notes if I can't get it to work. But I'm hoping that this says, hey, Axure, look for what people are typing into the search input. Check which titles contained, those letters. Let's try it. I'm going to type Calvin, because I think there's 3 Calvin Klein dresses. Ooh, can backspace out of that. I think there's 3 or 4 charter club dresses. Yep. How do you like them apples, everybody? Totally realistic search. You know, when you see things like this, it's like, Figma who? Yeah. So the ability to make this realistic and to be able to put this in front of people for usability testing, you should be able to see the power of that because it's completely realistic. You can see if people tend to browse, if they tend to search, how they prefer to filter. You can really bring that to life. Maybe people are only interested in sheath dresses. They could start searching for sheath, which is a style of dress. So did anybody have their search not work? Does anybody need help with that text search? I'll wait to see if anybody responds. Sorry. Who's being grumpy? Oh, Deanna's here? The low ego action hero? Hey, Deanna! Hey, Deanna! Sorry. Olivia. Sorry, my dogs like to wrestle when they see each other. Olivia and Deanna. Olivia. Sorry, they like to wrestle. They're fine. Nobody responded, so I'm assuming everybody's search worked correctly. Any questions there? Now, as for, and any questions at all, now is the time. We're going to be winding down, but let's talk about color and why color is different and something for you to practice, especially if you've done core skills. Take a look at what's going on in Color Universe. Now, over here, we had a box that said 6M. It looked selected, or it didn't look selected. What's going on over here? We've got 3 elements. We have a hotspot. We have a black swatch, which has a selected style, which means this is the thing that's going to be selected. It's called black swatch. And we have the text. You could even practice adding a style effect to the text. Maybe the text becomes bold. And what would happen is people are not clicking on the black swatch or the black text. They're clicking on the hotspot. Now, the filter will work the same and the chip will work the same, but what will change is the select. Because you can't say select this true. This is the hotspot. Remember, hotspots are invisible clickable areas. So your select wouldn't be a select this. It would be, you're going to have to call them by name. It would be select black swatch to true. And if you decide to give this, the word black, its own style, you would have to add the style effect here, again from core skills. You'd want to give it a name so you can find it later, color, black text, whatever you want to call it. And you would have to make sure that you are manually saying when people click the hotspot, select these true. And if they click the hotspot again, select them false. That also means that your condition would not be if selected of this is false, it would be selected black swatch is false. Because the hotspot is never really selected or not selected. Nobody can see that. The hotspot is always invisible. I hope the concept made sense there. Now is your time to ask questions. Who has any questions about repeaters, something that repeaters does that I didn't cover, something that wasn't clear that you didn't understand? Of course, this will be archived in the Axure channel, so you can always watch it later. You can work along with it. You can pause it. But yeah, we've got 6 or 7 people still joining live. Thank you so much for being here for hours. But I think for at least basic and intermediate repeaters, you've kind of got it. You know how to add to a repeater on the fly. So for example, if you had a data table and you had people typing in information, first name, last name, email, you would know how to take text on this and put it in a repeater column. Same technique we use to add a row to the chips. You would be adding a row and you would be telling it, in this column, put this stuff. In this column, put this stuff. So the technique is there, even for live on the spot adding to the data table. Axure does not have uploading images from the user perspective, so I don't think you could do, hey, add your address to this, upload. You pretty much have to fake out an upload in Axure. You'll give people an upload button, you'll pretend they did. So I don't think we've got uploading in Axure. You would have to fake that out, but you certainly could have people adding text data that is seen or metadata, put that into a repeater, and then be able to work with that. I'm not seeing any questions, so I don't know if everybody fell asleep or is crying. But yes, repeaters are definitely hard. That's why I consider them advanced. It really assumes there's a lot of stuff you already understand, like we talked about LVARs in core skills. We talked about dynamic panels in core skills. We talked about styling and interaction styles in core skills. We select true and false, and radio groups and selection groups. So many of these were from core skills. So, you know, some of you jumped in into the deep end a bit. But what I would say is just download a clean copy of the file from, and I'll put it back up on the screen. Remember, you can download a clean copy of the file at deltacx.link/repeaters. You can always download that as many times as you want or do a save as. And that way you can mess with it. You can try different things. But remember, you can also take a brand new Axure file, drag out a repeater, start putting stuff in it. You know, you can't cause too much damage. It's worth trying and practicing. And if you have any problems or questions, you know, you can always ask in our Slack or Discord. So deltacx.com/links. You can join our Slack or Discord. We've got a tools channel in both. Axure questions would go in there. You can also ask Axure questions on my Tuesday office hours. Alexis says, yeah, I'm still awake. Thank you. Good. At least Alexis is still awake and here. And so, yeah. So if there aren't any other Axure questions, that's usually as much as I teach repeaters. That's, again, repeaters for Axure 10. It's a little different in 9, 8, and 7. Is it worth upgrading to 10 just for repeaters? Depends how much you're using repeaters. Okay. So I guess I will just remind everybody we have a whole Axure playlist with 13 hours of core skills videos. Please enjoy. And I guess that's it. If there's no other questions, good luck. May the force of repeaters be with you. I guess I'll play us out of here. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I will see you on Tuesday's show. We won't have a show Monday because it's almost Christmas and everyone's busy. Thanks. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are